Simon & Schuster Audio presents Joyland by Stephen King. Read by Michael Kelly.
I had a car, but on most days in that fall of 1973, I walked to Joyland from Mrs. Shoplow's beachside accommodations in the town of Heavens Bay. It seemed like the right thing to do. The only thing, actually. By early September, Heaven Beach was almost completely deserted, which suited my mood. That fall was the most beautiful of my life. Even 40 years later, I can say that. And I was never so unhappy. I can say that, too. People think first love is sweet, and never sweeter than when that first bond snaps. You've heard 1,000 poppin' country songs that prove the point. Some fool got his heart broke. Yet that first broken heart is always the most painful, the slowest to mend, and leaves the most visible scar. What's so sweet about that? Through September and right into October, the North Carolina skies were clear and the air was warm even at 7 in the morning when I left my second-floor apartment by the outside stairs. If I started with a light jacket on, I was wearing it tied around my waist before I'd finished half of the 3 miles between the town and the amusement park. I'd make Betty's Bakery my first stop. Grabbing a couple of still warm croissants, my shadow would walk with me on the sand at least 20 feet long. Hopeful gulls smelling the croissants in their wax paper would circle overhead, and when I walked back, usually around 5, although sometimes I stayed later, there was nothing waiting for me in Heavens Bay, a town that mostly went sleepy by when summer was over, my shadow walked with me on the water. If the tide was in, it would waver on the surface, seeming to do a slow hula. Although I can't be completely sure, I think the boy and the woman and their dog were there from the first time I took that walk. The shore between the town and the cheerful, blinking gimcrackery of Joyland was lined with summer homes, many of them expensive, most of them clapped shut after Labor Day, but not the biggest of them, the one that looked like a green wooden castle. A boardwalk led from its wide back patio down to where the seagrass gave way to the fine white sand. At the end of the boardwalk was a picnic table, shaded by a bright green beach umbrella. In its shade, the boy sat in his wheelchair, wearing a baseball cap and covered from the waist down by a blanket even in the late afternoons when the temperature lingered in the 70s. I thought he was 5 or so, surely no older than 7. The dog, a Jack Russell Terrier, either lay beside him or sat at his feet. The woman sat on one of the picnic table benches, sometimes reading a book, mostly just staring out at the water. She was very beautiful. Going or coming, I always waved at them, and the boy waved back. She didn't. Not at first. 1973 was the year of the OPEC oil embargo, the year Richard Nixon announced he was not a crook, the year Edward G. Robinson and Noel Coward died. It was Devin Jones's lost year. I was a 21-year-old virgin with literary aspirations. I possessed 3 pair of blue jeans, 4 pair of jockey shorts, a clunker Ford with a good radio, occasional suicidal ideations, and a broken heart. Sweet, huh? The heartbreaker was Wendy Keegan, and she didn't deserve me. It's taken me most of my life to come to that conclusion, but you know the old saw, better late than never. She was from Portsmouth, New Hampshire. I was from South Berwick, Maine. That made her practically the girl next door. We had begun going together, as we used to say, during our freshman year at UNH. We actually met at the freshman mixer, and how sweet is that? Just like one of those pop songs. We were inseparable for 2 years, went everywhere together and did everything together. Everything, that is, but it. We were both work-study kids with university jobs. Hers was in the library, mine was in the Commons cafeteria. We were offered the chance to hold on to those jobs during the summer of 1972, and of course we did. The money wasn't great, but the togetherness was priceless. I assumed that would also be the deal during the summer of 1973, until Wendy announced that her friend Renee had gotten them jobs working at Filene's in Boston. "Where does that leave me?" I asked. "You can always come down," she said. "I'll miss you like mad, but really, Deb, we could probably use some time apart." A phrase that is very often a death knell. She may have seen that idea on my face because she stood on tiptoe and kissed me. "Absence makes the heart grow fonder," she said. "Besides, with my own place, maybe you can stay over." But she didn't quite look at me when she said that, and I never did stay over. Too many roommates, she said, too little time. Of course, such problems can be overcome, but somehow we never did, which should have told me something. In retrospect, it tells me a lot. Several times we had been very close to it, but it just never quite happened. She always drew back, and I never pressed her. God help me, I was being gallant. I have wondered often since what would have changed for good or for ill if I had not been. What I know now is that gallant young men rarely get pussy. Put it on a sampler and hang it in your kitchen. The prospect of another summer mopping cafeteria floors and loading elderly commons dishwashers with dirty plates didn't hold much charm for me. Not with Wendy 70 miles south enjoying the bright lights of Boston. But it was steady work, which I needed, and I didn't have any other prospects. Then in late February, one literally came down the dish line to me on the conveyor belt. Someone had been reading Carolina Living while he or she snarfed up that day's Blue Plate luncheon special, which happened to be Mexicali burgers and caramba fries. He or she had left the magazine on the tray, and I picked it up along with the dishes. I almost tossed it in the trash, then didn't. Free reading material was, after all, free reading material. I was a work-study kid, remember? I stuck it in my back pocket and forgot about it until I got back to my dorm room. There it flopped onto the floor, open to the classified section at the back while I was changing my pants. Whoever had been reading the magazine had circled several job possibilities, although in the end, he or she must have decided none of them was quite right. Otherwise, Carolina Living wouldn't have come riding down the conveyor belt. Near the bottom of the page was an ad that caught my eye even though it hadn't been circled. In bold-faced type, the first line read, "Work close to heaven." What English major could read that and not hang in for the pitch? And what glum 21-year-old, beset with the growing fear that he might be losing his girlfriend, would not be attracted by the idea of working in a place called Joyland? There was a telephone number, and on a whim, I called it. A week later, a job application landed in my dormitory mailbox. The attached letter stated that if I wanted full-time summer employment, which I did, I'd be doing many different jobs, most but not all custodial. I would have to possess a valid driver's license, and I would need to interview. I could do that on the upcoming spring break instead of going home to Maine for the week. Only I'd been planning to spend at least some of that week with Wendy. We might even get around to it. "Go for the interview," Wendy said when I told her. She didn't even hesitate. "It'll be an adventure." "Being with you would be an adventure," I said. "There'll be plenty of time for that next year." She stood on tiptoe and kissed me. She always stood on tiptoe. Was she seeing the other guy even then? Probably not, but I'll bet she'd noticed him, because he was in her advanced sociology course. Renee St. Clair would have known and probably would have told me if I had asked. Telling stuff was Renee's specialty. I'll bet she wore the priest out when she did the old confession bit. But some things you don't want to know. Like why the girl you loved with all your heart kept saying no to you, but tumbled into bed with a new guy at almost the first opportunity. I'm not sure anybody ever gets completely over their first love, and that still rankles. Part of me still wants to know what was wrong with me, what I was lacking. I'm in my 60s now, my hair is gray, and I'm a prostate cancer survivor, but I still want to know why I wasn't good enough for Wendy Keegan. I took a train called the Southerner from Boston to North Carolina, not much of an adventure, but cheap, and a bus from Wilmington to Heavens Bay. My interview was with Fred Dean, who was, among many other functions, Joyland's employment officer. After 15 minutes of Q&A, plus a look at my driver's license and my Red Cross life-saving certificate, he handed me a plastic badge on a lanyard. It bore the word visitor, that day's date, and a cartoon picture of a grinning, blue-eyed German shepherd who bore a passing resemblance to the famous cartoon sleuth Scooby-Doo. "Take a walk around," Dean said. "Ride the Carolina Spin if you like. Most of the rides aren't up and running yet, but that one is. Tell Lane I said okay. What I gave you is a day pass, but I want you back here by," he looked at his watch, "let's say 1 o'clock. Tell me then if you want the job. I've got 5 spots left, but they're all basically the same, as happy helpers." "Thank you, sir." He nodded, smiling. "Don't know how you'll feel about this place, but it suits me fine. It's a little old and a little rickety, but I find that charming. I tried Disney for a while. Didn't like it. It's too, I don't know." "Too corporate?" I ventured. "Exactly. Too corporate. Too buffed and shiny. So I came back to Joyland a few years ago. Haven't regretted it. We fly a bit more by the seat of our pants here. Place has a little of the old-time carny flavor. Go on. Look around. See what you think. More important, see how you feel." Can I ask one question first? Of course. I fingered my day pass. Who's the dog? His smile became a grin. That's Howie the Happy Hound, Joyland's mascot. Bradley Easterbrook built Joyland, and the original Howie was his dog. Long dead now, but you still see a lot of them if you work here this summer. I did, and I didn't. An easy riddle, but the explanation will have to wait a while. Joyland was an indie. Not as big as a Six Flags park, and nowhere near as big as Disney World, but it was large enough to be impressive, especially with Joyland Avenue, the main drag, and Hound Dog Way, the secondary drag, almost empty and looking 8 lanes wide. I heard the whine of power saws and saw plenty of workmen, the largest crew swarming over the Thunderball, one of Joyland's 2 coasters. But there were no customers, because the park didn't open until May 15th. A few of the food concessions were doing business to take care of the workers' lunch needs, though, and an old lady in front of a star-studded Tell Your Fortune kiosk was staring at me suspiciously. With one exception, everything else was shut up tight. The exception of the Carolina Spin. It was 170 feet tall, this I found out later, and turning very slowly. Out in front stood a tightly muscled guy in faded jeans, balding suede boots splotched with grease, and a strap-style t-shirt. He wore a derby hat tilted on his coal-black hair. A filterless cigarette was parked behind one ear. He looked like a cartoon carnival barker from an old-time newspaper strip. There was an open toolbox and a big portable radio on an orange crate beside him. The faces were singing Stay With Me. The guy was bopping to the beat, hands in his back pockets, hips moving side to side. I had a thought, absurd but perfectly clear. When I grow up, I want to look just like this guy. He pointed to the pass. Freddie Dean sent you, right? Told you everything else was closed, but you could take a ride on the big wheel? Yes, sir. A ride on the spin means you're in. He likes the chosen few to get the aerial view. You gonna take the job? I think so. He stuck out his hand. I'm Lane Hardy. Welcome aboard, kid. I shook with him. Devin Jones. Pleased to meet you. He started up the inclined walk leading to the gently turning ride, grabbed a long lever that looked like a stick shift, and edged it back. The wheel came to a slow stop with one of the gaily painted cabins, the image of Howie the Happy Hound on each, swaying at the passenger loading dock. Climb aboard, Jonesy. I'm going to send you up where the air is rare and the view is much more than fair. I climbed into the cabin and closed the door. Lane gave it a shake to make sure it was latched, dropped the safety bar, then returned to his rudimentary controls. Ready for takeoff, Captain? I guess so. Amazement awaits. He gave me a wink and advanced the control stick. The wheel began to turn again, and all at once he was looking up at me. So was the old lady by the fortune-telling booth. Her neck was craned, and she was shading her eyes. I waved to her. She didn't wave back. Then I was above everything but the convoluted dips and twists of the Thunderball, rising into the chilly early spring air and feeling, stupid but true, that I was leaving all my cares and worries down below. Joyland wasn't a theme park, which allowed it to have a little bit of everything. There was a secondary roller coaster called the Delirium Shaker, and a water slide, Captain Nemo's Splash and Crash. On the far western side of the park was a special annex for the little ones called the Wiggle Waggle Village. There was also a concert hall where most of the acts, this I also learned later, were either B-list C&W or the kind of rockers who peaked in the 50s or 60s. I remember that Johnny Otis and Big Joe Turner did a show there together. I had to ask Brenda Rafferty, the head accountant who was also a kind of den mother to the Hollywood girls, who they were. Bren thought I was dense. I thought she was old. We were both probably right. Lane Hardy took me all the way to the top and then stopped the wheel. I sat in the swaying car, gripping the safety bar, and looking out at a brand-new world. To the west was the North Carolina flatland, looking incredibly green to a New England kid who was used to thinking of March as nothing but true spring's cold and muddy precursor. To the east was the ocean, a deep metallic blue until it broke in creamy white pulses on the beach where I would tote my abused heart up and down a few months hence. Directly below me was the good-natured jumble of Joyland, the big rides and small ones, the concert hall and concessions, the souvenir shops and the Happy Hound shuttle, which took customers to the adjacent motels and, of course, the beach. To the north was Heaven's Bay. From high above the park, upstairs where the air is rare, the town looked like a nestle of children's blocks from which 4 church steeples rose at the major points of the compass. The wheel began to move again. I came down feeling like a kid in a Rudyard Kipling story, riding on the nose of an elephant. Lane Hardy brought me to a stop, but didn't bother to unlatch the car's door for me. I was, after all, almost an employee. "How'd you like it?" "Great," I said. "Yeah, it ain't bad for a grandma ride." He reset his derby so it slanted the other way and cast an appraising eye over me. "How tall are you? 6'3"? 6'4". "Uh-huh. Let's see how you like riding all 6'4" you on the spin in the middle of July, wearing the fur and singing happy birthday to some spoiled rotten little snothole with cotton candy in one hand and melting collie cone in the other." "Wearing what fur?" But he was headed back to his machinery and didn't answer. Maybe he couldn't hear me over his radio, which was now blasting Crocodile Rock. Or maybe he just wanted my future occupation as one of Joyland's cadre of happy hounds to come as a surprise. I had over an hour to kill before meeting with Fred Dean again, so I strolled up Hound Dog Way to a lunch wagon that looked like it was doing a pretty good business. Not everything at Joyland was canine-themed, but plenty of stuff was, including this particular eatery, which was called Pupalicious. I was on a ridiculously tight budget for this little job-hunting expedition, but I thought I could afford a couple bucks for a chili dog and a paper cup of French fries. When I reached the palm-reading concession, Madame Fortuna planted herself in my path, except that's not quite right, because she was only Fortuna between May 15th and Labor Day. During those 16 weeks, she dressed in long skirts, gauzy layered blouses, and shawls decorated with various Kabbalistic symbols. Gold hoops hung from her ears so heavy they dragged the lobes down, and she talked in a thick Romany accent that made her sound like a character from a 1930s fright flick, the kind featuring mist-shrouded castles and howling wolves. During the rest of the year, she was a childless widow from Brooklyn who collected Hummel figures and liked movies, especially the weepy-ass kind where some chick gets cancer and dies beautifully. Today, she was smartly put together in a black pantsuit and low heels. A rose-pink scarf around her throat added a touch of color. As Fortuna, she sported masses of wild gray locks, but that was a wig and still stored under its own glass dome in her little Heaven's Bay house. Her actual hair was a cropped cap of dyed black. The love story fan from Brooklyn and Fortuna the seer only came together in one respect. Both fancied themselves psychic. "There is a shadow over you, young man," she announced. I looked down and saw she was absolutely right. I was standing in the shadow of the Carolina Spin. We both were. "Not that, stupid Nick. Over your future, you will have a hunger." I had a bad one already, but a Pupalicious footlong would soon take care of it. "That's very interesting, Mrs. "Rosalind Gold," she said, holding out her hand. "But you can call me Rosie. Everyone does. But during the season—" She fell into character, which meant she sounded like Bela Lugosi with breasts. "During the season, I am Fortuna." I shook with her. If she had been in costume as well as in character, half a dozen gold bangles would have clattered on her wrist. "Very nice to meet you." And trying on the same accent, "I am Devin." She wasn't amused. "An Irish name?" "Right." "The Irish are full of sorrow, and many have the sight. I don't know if you do, but you will meet someone who does." Actually, I was full of happiness, along with that surpassing desire to put a Pupalicious pup, preferably loaded with chili, down my throat. This was feeling like an adventure. I told myself I'd probably feel less that way when I was swabbing out toilets at the end of a busy day, or cleaning puke from the seats of the whirly cups. But just then, everything seemed perfect. "Are you practicing your act?" She drew herself up to her full height, which might have been 5'2". "Is no act, my lad," she said, act for act. "Jews are the most psychically sensitive race on earth. This is a thing everyone knows." She dropped the accent. "Also, Joyland beats hanging out a palmistry shingle on 2nd Avenue. Sorrowful or not, I like you. You give off good vibrations." "One of my very favorite Beach Boys songs." "But you are on the edge of great sorrow." She paused, doing the old emphasis thing. "And perhaps danger." "Do you see a beautiful woman with dark hair in my future?" Wendy was a beautiful woman with dark hair. "No," Rosie said, and what came next stopped me dead. "She is in your past." Okay. I walked around her in the direction of Pupalicious, being careful not to touch her. She was a charlatan. I didn't have a single doubt about that, but touching her just then still seemed like a lousy idea. No good. She walked with me. and your future is a little girl and a little boy. The boy has a dog. A happy hound, I bet, probably named Howie. She ignored this latest attempt at levity. The girl wears a red hat and carries a doll. One of these children has the sight. I don't know which. It is hidden from me. I hardly heard that part of her spiel. I was thinking of the previous pronouncement, made in a flat Brooklyn accent. She is in your past. Madame Fortuna got a lot of stuff wrong, I found out, but she did seem to have a genuine psychic touch, and on the day I interviewed for a summer at Joyland, she was hitting on all cylinders. I got the job. Mr. Dean was especially pleased by my Red Cross life-saving certificate obtained at the YMCA the summer I turned 16. That was what I called my boredom summer. In the years since, I've discovered there's a lot to be said for boredom. I told Mr. Dean when my finals ended, and promised him that I'd be at Joyland 2 days later, ready for team assignment and training. We shook hands, and he welcomed me aboard. I had a moment when I wondered if he was going to encourage me to do the happy hound bark with him or something equivalent, but he just wished me a good day and walked out of the office with me, a little man with sharp eyes and a lithe stride. Standing on the little cement block porch of the employment office, listening to the pound of the surf and smelling the damp salt air, I felt excited all over again and hungry for summer to begin. You're in the amusement business now, young Mr. Jones, my new boss said. Not the carny business, not exactly, not the way we run things today, but not so far removed from it either. Do you know what that means, to be in the amusement business? No, sir, not exactly. His eyes were solemn, but there was a ghost of a grin on his mouth. It means the rubes have to leave with smiles on their faces. And by the way, if I ever hear you call the customers rubes, you're going to be out the door so fast you won't know what hit you. I can say it because I've been in the amusement business since I was old enough to shave. They're rubes, no different from the redneck Okies and Arkies that rubbernecked their way through every carny I worked for after World War II. The people who come to Joyland may wear better clothes and drive Fords and Volkswagen microbuses instead of farmall pickups, but the place turns them into rubes with their mouths hung open. If it doesn't, it's not doing its job. But to you, they're the conies. When they hear it, they think Coney Island. We know better. They're rabbits, Mr. Jones, nice, plump, fun-loving rabbits hopping from ride to ride and shy to shy instead of from hole to hole. He dropped me a wink and gave my shoulder a squeeze. The conies have to leave happy or this place dries up and blows away. I've seen it happen, and when it does, it happens fast. It's an amusement park, young Mr. Jones, so pet the conies and give their ears only the gentlest of tugs. In a word, amuse them. Okay, I said, although I didn't know how much customer amusement I'd be providing by polishing the Devil Wagons, Joyland's version of Dodgem cars, or running a street sweeper down Hound Dog Way after the gates closed. And don't you dare leave me in the lurch. Be here on the agreed-upon date and 5 minutes before the agreed-upon time. Okay. There are 2 important showbiz rules, kiddo. Always know where your wallet is, and show up. When I walked out beneath the big arch with Welcome to Joyland written on it in neon letters, now off, and into the mostly empty parking lot, Lane Hardy was leaning against one of the shuttered ticket booths, smoking the cigarette previously parked behind his ear. Can't smoke on the grounds anymore, he said. New rule. Mr. Easterbrook says we're the first park in America to have it, but we won't be the last. Get the job? I did. Congratulations. Did Freddie give you the carny spiel? Sorta, yeah. Tell you about petting the conies? Yeah. He can be a pain in the banana, but he's old-time showbiz, seen it all, most of it twice, and he's not wrong. I think you'll do okay. You got a carny look about you, kid. He waved a hand at the park with its landmarks rising against the blameless blue sky, the Thunderball, the Delirium Shaker, the convoluted twists and turns of Captain Nemo's water slide, and, of course, the Carolina Spin. Who knows? This place might be your future. Maybe, I said, although I already knew what my future was going to be, writing novels and the kind of short stories they published in the New Yorker. I had it all planned out. Of course, I also had marriage to Wendy Keegan all planned out, and how we'd wait until we were in our 30s to have a couple of kids. When you're 21, life is a roadmap. It's only when you get to be 25 or so that you begin to suspect that you've been looking at the map upside down, and not until you're 40 are you entirely sure. By the time you're 60, take it from me, you're fucking lost. Did Rosie Gold give you your usual bundle of Fortuna horse shit? Lane chuckled. Why do I even ask? Just remember, kid, that 90% of everything she says really is horse shit. The other 10, let's just say she's told folks some stuff that rocked them back on their heels. What about you? I asked. Any revelations that rocked you back on your heels? He grinned. The day I let Rosie read my palm is the day I go back on the road ride jocking the Tornado and Chitlin circuit. Mrs. Hardy's boy doesn't mess with Ouija boards and crystal balls. Do you see a beautiful woman with dark hair in my future? I'd asked. No, she is in your past. He was looking at me closely. What's up? You swallow a fly? It's nothing, I said. Come on, son. Did she feed you truth or horseshit? Live or Memorex? Tell your daddy. Definitely horseshit. I looked at my watch. I've got a bus to catch at 5. If I'm going to make the train to Boston at 7, I better get moving. You got plenty of time. Where are you staying this summer? I hadn't even thought about it. You might want to stop at Mrs. Shoplaw's on the way to the bus station. Plenty of people in Heaven's Bay rent to summer help, but she's the best. She has a lot of happy helpers over the years. Her place is easy to find. It's where Main Street ends at the beach. Great big rambler, painted gray. You'll see the sign hanging from the porch. Can't miss it because it's made out of shells and some are always falling off. Mrs. Shoplaw's Beachside Accommodations. Tell her I sent you. Okay, I will, thanks. If you rent there, you can walk down here on the beach if you want to save gas money for something more important, like stepping out on your day off. That beach walk makes a pretty way to start the morning. Good luck, kid. Look forward to working with you. He held out his hand. I shook it and thanked him again. Since he'd put the idea in my head, I decided to take the beach walk back to town. It would save me 20 minutes waiting for a taxi I couldn't really afford. I had almost reached the wooden stairs going down to the sand when he called after me. Hey, Jonesy, want to know something Rosie won't tell you? Sure, I said. We got a spook palace called Horror House. The old Razola won't go within 50 yards of it. She hates the pop-ups and the torture chamber and the recorded voices. But the real reason is that she's afraid that it really might be haunted. Yeah? Yeah. And she ain't the only one. Half a dozen folks who work here claim to have seen her. Are you serious? But this was just one of the questions you ask when you're flabbergasted. I could see he was. I'd tell you the story, but break time's over for me. I got some power poles to replace on the devil wagons, and the safety inspection guys are coming to look at the Thunderball around 3. What a pain in the ass those guys are. Ask Shoplaw. When it comes to Joyland, Emelina Shoplaw knows more than I do. You could say she's a student of the place. Compared to her, I'm a newbie. This isn't a joke? A little rubber chicken you tossed all the new hires? Do I look like I'm joking? He didn't, but he did look like he was having a good time. He dropped me a wink. What's a self-respecting amusement park without a ghost? Maybe you'll see her yourself. The rubes never do, that's for sure. Now hurry along, kiddo. Nail down a room before you catch the bus back to Wilmington. You'll thank me later. With a name like Emelina Shoplaw, it's hard not to picture a rosy-cheeked landlady out of a Charles Dickens novel. One who went everywhere to bosom me bustle and said things like, Lord save us. She'd serve tea and scones while a supporting cast of kind-hearted eccentrics looked on approvingly. She might even pinch my cheek as we sat roasting chestnuts over a crackling fire. But we rarely get what we imagine in this world, and the gal who answered my ring was tall, 50-ish, flat-chested, and as pale as a frosted window pane. She carried an old-fashioned beanbag ashtray in one hand and a smoldering cigarette in the other. Her mousy brown hair had been done up in fat coils that covered her ears. They made her look like an aging version of a princess in a Grimm's fairy tale. I explained why I was there. Going to work at Joyland, huh? Well, I guess you better come in. Do you have references? Not apartment references, no. I live in a dorm. But I've got a work reference from my boss at the Commons. The Commons is a food service cafeteria at UNH where I know what a Commons is. I was born at night, but it wasn't last night. She showed me into the front parlor. A house-long room stuffed with mismatched furniture and dominated by a big table model TV. She pointed at it. Color. My renters are welcome to use it, and the parlor, until 10 on weeknights and midnight on the weekends. Sometimes I join the kids for a movie or the Saturday afternoon baseball. We have pizza or I make popcorn. It's jolly. Jolly, I thought, as in jolly good, and it sounded jolly good. Tell me, Mr. Jones, do you drink and get noisy? I consider that sort of behavior antisocial, although many don't. No, ma'am. I drank a little, but rarely got noisy. Usually after a beer or two, I just got sleepy. Asking if you use drugs would be pointless. You'd say no whether you do or don't, wouldn't you? But of course that sort of thing always reveals itself in time, and when it does, I invite my renters to find fresh accommos. Not even pot. Are we clear on that? Yes. She peered at me. You don't look like a pothead. I'm not. I have space for 4 boarders, and only one of those places is currently taken. Miss Ackerley. She's a librarian. All my rents are single rooms, but they're far nicer than what you'd find in a motel. The one I'm thinking of for you is on the 2nd floor. It has its own bathroom and shower, which those on the 3rd floor do not. There's an outside staircase, too, which is convenient if you have a lady friend. I have nothing against lady friends, being both a lady and quite friendly myself. Do you have a lady friend, Mr. Jones? Yes, but she's working in Boston this summer. Well, perhaps you will meet someone. You know what the song says, love is all around. I only smiled at that. In the spring of '73, the concept of loving anyone other than Wendy Keegan seemed utterly foreign to me. You'll have a car, I imagine. There are just 2 parking spaces out back for 4 tenants, so every summer it's first come, first served. You're first come, and I think you'll do. If I find you don't, it's down the road you'll go. Does that strike you as fair? Yes, ma'am. Good, 'cause that's the way it is. I'll need the usual. First month, last month, damage deposit. She named a figure that also seemed fair. Nevertheless, it was going to make a shambles of my first New Hampshire trust account. Will you take a check? Will it bounce? No, ma'am, not quite. She threw back her head and laughed. Then I'll take it, assuming you still want the room once you've seen it. She stubbed out her cigarette and rose. By the way, no smoking upstairs, it's a matter of insurance. And no smoking in here once the tenants are in residence. That's a matter of common politeness. Do you know that old man Easterbrook is instituting a no-smoking policy at the park? I heard that. He'll probably lose business. He might at first. Then he might gain some. I'd put my money on Brad. He's a shrewd guy, Carney from Carney. I thought to ask her what that meant exactly, but she had already moved on. Shall we have a peek at the room? A peek at the 2nd floor room was enough to convince me it would be fine. The bed was big, which was good, and the window looked out on the ocean, which was even better. The bathroom was something of a joke, so tiny that when I sat on the commode, my feet would be in the shower. But college students with only crumbs in their financial cupboards can't be too picky. And the view was the clincher. I doubted if the rich folks had a better one from their summer places along Heaven's Row. I pictured bringing Wendy here, the 2 of us admiring the view, and then, in the big bed with the steady, sleepy beat of the surf outside, it. Finally, it. I want it, I said, and I felt my cheeks heat up. It wasn't just the room I was talking about. I know you do. It's all over your darn face. As if she knew what I was thinking, and maybe she did. She grinned, a big wide one that made her almost Dickensian in spite of her flat bosom and pale skin. Your own little nest. Not the Palace of Versailles, but your own. Not like having a dorm room, is it? Even a single. No, I admitted. I was thinking I'd have to talk my dad into putting another $500 into my bank account to keep me covered until I started getting paychecks. He'd grouse, but come through. I just hoped I wouldn't have to play the dead mom card. She had been gone almost 4 years, but Dad carried 6 pictures of her in his wallet and still wore his wedding ring. Your own job and your own place, she said, sounding a bit dreamy. That's good stuff, Devin. You mind me calling you Devin? Make it Dev. All right, I will. She looked around the little room with its sharply sloping roof, it was under an eave, and sighed. The thrill doesn't last long, but while it does, it's a fine thing. That sense of independence. I think you'll fit in here. You've got a Carney look about you. You're the 2nd person to tell me that. Then I thought of my conversation with Lane Hardy in the parking lot. 3rd, actually. And I bet I know who the other 2 were. Anything else I can show you? The bathroom's not much, I know, but it beats having to take a dump in a dormitory bathroom while a couple of guys at the sinks fart and tell lies about all the girls they made out with last night. I burst into roars of laughter, and Mrs. Emelina Shoplaw joined me. We descended by way of the outside stairs. How's Lane Hardy? She asked when we got to the bottom. Still wearing that stupid beanie of his? It looked like a derby to me. She shrugged. Beanie, derby, what's the diff? He's fine, but he told me something. She was giving me a head-cocked look, almost smiling, but not quite. He told me the Joyland Funhouse, horror house, he called it, is haunted. I asked him if he was pulling my leg, and he said he wasn't. He said you knew about it. Did he now? Yes. He says that when it comes to Joyland, you know more than he does. Well, she said, reaching into the pocket of her slacks and bringing out a pack of Winston's, I know a fair amount. My husband was chief engineer down there until he took a heart attack and died. When it turned out his life insurance was lousy and borrowed against it the hilt in the bargain, I started renting out the top 2 stories of this place. What else was I going to do? We just had the one kid, and now she's up in New York working for an ad agency. She lit her cigarette, inhaled, and chuffed it back out as laughter. Working on losing her southern accent, too, but that's another story. This overgrown monstrosity of a house was Howie's play toy, and I never begrudged him. At least it's paid off, and I like staying connected to the park, because it makes me feel like I'm still connected to him. Can you understand that? Sure. She considered me through a rising raft of cigarette smoke, smiled, and shook her head. No, you're being kind, but you're a little too young. I lost my mom 4 years ago. My dad's still grieving. He says there's a reason wife and life sound almost the same. I've got school, at least, and my girlfriend. Dad's knocking around a house just north of Kittery that's way too big for him. He knows he should sell it and get a smaller one closer to where he works. We both know. But he stays. So, yeah, I know what you mean. I'm sorry for your loss, Mrs. Shoplaw said. Something to hell open my mouth too wide and fall right in. That bus of yours, is it the 510? Yes. Well, come on in the kitchen. I'll make you a toasted cheese and microwave you a bowl of tomato soup. You got time. And I'll tell you the sad story of the Joyland ghost while you eat if you want to hear it. Is it really a ghost story? I've never been in that damn fun house, so I don't know for sure. But it's a murder story. That much I am sure of. The soup was just Campbell's out of the can, but the toasted cheese was Munster, my favorite, and tasted heavenly. She poured me a glass of milk and insisted I drink it. I was, Mrs. Shoplaw said, a growing boy. She sat down opposite me with her own bowl of soup, but no sandwich. Have to watch my girlish figure, and told me the tale. Some of it she had gotten from the newspapers and TV reports. The juicier bits came from her Joyland contacts, of whom she had many. It was 4 years ago, which I guess would make it around the same time your mother died. Do you know what always comes first to my mind when I think about it? The guy's shirt and the gloves. Thinking about those things gives me the creeps, because it means he planned it. You might be kind of starting in the middle, I said. Mrs. Shoplaw laughed. Yeah, I suppose I am. The name of your supposed ghost is Linda Gray, and she was from Florence. That's way over South Carolina way. She and her boyfriend, if that's what he was. The cops checked her background pretty closely and found no trace of him. Spent her last night on Earth in the Luna Inn, half a mile south of here along the beach. They entered Joyland around 11 o'clock the next day. He bought them day passes using cash. They rode some rides, and then had a late lunch at Rock Lobster, the seafood place down by the concert hall. That was past 1 o'clock. As for the time of death, you probably know how they establish it. Contents of the stomach and so on. Yeah. My sandwich was gone, and I turned my attention to the soup. The story wasn't hurting my appetite any. I was 21, remember? And although I would have told you different, deep down I was convinced I was never going to die. Not even my mother's death had been able to shake that core belief. He fed her, and then he took her on the Carolina spin. A slow ride, easy on the digestion. And then he took her into the horror house. They went in together, but only he came out. About halfway along the course of the ride, which takes about 9 minutes, he cut her throat and he threw her out beside the monorail track the cars run on. Threw her out like a piece of trash. He must have known there'd be a mess, because he was wearing 2 shirts, and he put on a pair of yellow work gloves. They found the top shirt, the one that would have caught most of the blood, about 100 yards further along from the body. The gloves a little further along still. I could see it. First the body, still warm and pulsing, then the shirt, then the gloves. The killer, meanwhile, sits tight and finishes the ride. Mrs. Shoplaw was right. It was creepy. When the ride ended, the son of a bee just got out and walked away. He mopped up the car. That shirt they found was sopping, but he didn't quite get all the blood. One of the helpers spotted some on the seat before the next ride started and cleaned it up. Didn't think twice about it either. Blood on amusement park rides isn't unusual. Mostly it's some kid who gets overexcited and has a nose gusher. You'll find out for yourself. Just make sure you wear your own gloves when you do the cleanup in case of diseases. They have them at all the first aid stations, and there are first aid stations all over the park. Nobody noticed that he had got off the ride without his date? Nope. This was mid-July, the very height of the season, and the place was a swarming madhouse. They didn't find the body until 1 o'clock the next morning, long after the park was closed and the horror house work lights were turned on. For the graveyard shift, you know. You'll get a chance to experience that. All the Happy Helper crews get cleanup duty 1 week a month, and you want to catch up on your sleep ahead of time, because that swing shift's a booger. People rode past her until the park closed and didn't see her. If they did, they thought it was just part of the show, but probably the body went unnoticed. Remember, Horror House is a dark ride, the only one in Joyland as it happens. Other parks have more. A dark ride. I struck a shivery chord, but it wasn't strong enough to keep me from finishing my soup. What about a description of them? Maybe from whoever served them at the restaurant? They had better than that. They had pictures. You want to believe the police made sure they got on TV and printed in the newspapers. How did that happen? The Hollywood girls, Mrs. Shoplaw said. There are always half a dozen work in the park when it's going full blast. There's never been anything close to a cooch joint at Joyland, but old man Easterbrook didn't spend all these years in rolling carnies for nothing. He knows people like a little dash of sex appeal to go with the rides and the corn dogs. There's one Hollywood girl on each helper team. You'll get yours, and you and the rest of the guys on your team will be expected to keep your big brotherly eye out in case anyone bothers her. They run around in these short green dresses and green high heels and cutie pie green hats that always make me think of Robin Hood and his merry men, only they're the merry chicks. They tote speed graphic cameras like the kind you see in old movies, and they take pictures of the rubes. She paused. Although I'd advise you against calling the customers that yourself. Already been warned by Mr. Dean, I said. Figures. Anyhow, the Hollywood girls are told to concentrate on family groups and dating couples who look over 21. Kids younger than that usually aren't interested in souvenir photos. They'd rather spend their money on food and arcade games. So the deal is, the girls snap first, then approach. She did a breathy little Marilyn Monroe voice. Hello. Welcome to Joyland. I'm Karen. If you'd like a copy of the picture I just took, give me your name and check at the Hollywood photo booth in Hound Dog Way as you exit the park. Like that. One of them took a picture of Linda Gray and her boyfriend at the Annie Oakley shooting gallery, but when she approached, the guy gave her the brush off. A hard brush off. She told the cops later that he looked like he would have taken her camera and broken it if he thought he could get away with it. Said his eyes gave her chills. Hard and gray, she said. Mrs. Shoplaw smiled and shrugged. Only it turned out he was wearing sunglasses. You know how some girls like to dramatize. As a matter of fact, I did. Wendy's friend Renee could turn a routine trip to the dentist into a horror movie scenario. That was the best picture, but not the only one. The cops went through all the Hollywood girl snaps from that day and found the gray girl and her friend in the background of at least 4 others. In the best of those, they're standing in line for the Whirly Cups, and he's got his hand on her keister. Pretty chummy for someone none of her family or friends had ever seen before. Too bad there aren't closed-circuit TV cameras, I said. My lady friend got a job at Filene's in Boston this summer, and she says they got a few of those cameras and are putting up more to foil shoplifters. A day will come when they have them everywhere, she said. Just like in that science fiction book about the thought police. I don't look forward to it either. But they'll never have them in rides like Horror House. Not even infrared ones can see in the dark. No? Nope. There's no tunnel of love at Joyland, but Horror House is most definitely the tunnel of grope. My husband told me once that a day when the graveyard shift cleanup crew doesn't find at least 3 pair of panties besides its track is a slow day indeed. But they did have that one great photo of the guy at the shooting gallery, a portrait almost. It ran in the papers and on TV for a week. Him snuggled up to her hip to hip, showing her how to hold the rifle the way the guys always do. Everyone in both Carolinas must have seen it. She's smiling, but he looks dead serious. With his gloves and knife in his pockets the whole time, I said, marveling at the idea. Razor. Huh? He's a straight razor, or something like it. That's what the medical examiner figured. Anyway, they had those photos, including the one great one, and you know what? You can't make his face out in any of them. Because of the sunglasses? For starters. Also a goatee that covered his chin, and a baseball cap. The kind with a long bill that shaded what little of his face his sunglasses and goatee didn't cover. Could have been anyone. Could have been you, except for you're dark-haired instead of blonde and don't have a bird's head tattooed on one of your hands. This guy did. An eagle or maybe a hawk. It showed up very clearly in the shooting gallery pic. They ran a blow-up of the tat in the paper for 5 days running, hoping someone would recognize it. Nobody did. No leads at the inn where they stayed the night before? Uh-uh. He showed a South Carolina driver's license when he checked in, but it was stolen a year before. No one even saw her. She must have waited in the car. She was a Jane Doe for almost a week, but the police released a full face sketch. Made her look like she was sleeping, not dead with her throat cut. Someone, a friend she went to nursing school with, I think it was, saw it and recognized it. She told the girl's parents. I can't imagine how they must have felt, coming up here in their car and hoping against hope that when they got to the morgue it would turn out to be someone else's well-loved child. She shook her head slowly. Kids are such a risk, Dev. That ever cross your mind? I guess so. Which means it hasn't. Me, I think if they turned back that sheet and it was my daughter laying there, I'd lose my mind. You don't think Linda Gray really haunts the funhouse, do you? I can't answer that, because I hold no opinion on the afterlife, pro or con. My feeling is I'll find that stuff out when I get there, and that's good enough for me. All I know is that lots of people who work at Joyland claim to have seen her standing beside the track, wearing what she had on when they found her. Blue skirt and blue sleeveless blouse. None of them would have seen those colors in the photos they released to the public, because the speed graphics the Hollywood girls use only shoot black and white. Easier and cheaper to develop, I guess. Maybe the color of her clothes was mentioned in the articles. She shrugged. Might have been. I don't remember. But several people have also mentioned that the girl they saw standing by the track was wearing a blue Alice band, and that wasn't in the news stories. They held it back for almost a year, hoping to use it on a likely suspect if they came up with one. Lane said the Rubes never see her. No, she only shows up after hours. It's mostly happy helpers on the graveyard shift who see her, but I know at least one safety inspector from Raleigh who claims he did, because I had a drink with him at the Sand Dollar. Guy said she was just standing there on his ride-through. He thought it was a new pop-up until she raised her hands to him like this. Mrs. Shoplaw held her hands out with her palms upturned, a supplicatory gesture. He said it felt like the temperature dropped 20 degrees. A cold pocket, he called it. When he turned and looked back, she was gone. I thought of Lane in his tight jeans, scuffed boots, and tilted tough boy derby. Truth or horse shit, he'd asked. Live or Memorex? I thought the ghost of Linda Gray was almost certainly horse shit, but I hoped it wasn't. I hoped I would see her. It would be a great story to tell Wendy, and in those days, all my thoughts led back to her. If I bought this shirt, would Wendy like it? If I wrote a story about a young girl getting her first kiss while on a horseback ride, would Wendy enjoy it? If I saw a ghost of a murdered girl, would Wendy be fascinated? Maybe enough to want to come down to see for herself? There was a follow-up story in the Charleston Post-Courier about 6 months after the murder, Mrs. Shoplaw said. Turns out that since 1961 there have been 4 similar murders in Georgia and the Carolinas. All young girls. 1 stabbed, 3 others with their throats cut. The reporter dug up at least 1 cop who said all of them could have been killed by the guy who murdered Linda Gray. Beware the funhouse killer, I said in a deep announcer-type voice. That's exactly what the paper called him. Hungry, weren't you? You ate everything but the bowl. Now I think you better write me that check and beat feet on to the bus station, or you're apt to be spending the night on my sofa. Which looked comfortable enough, but I was anxious to get back north. 2 days left in spring break, and then I'd be back at school with my arm around Wendy Keegan's waist. I took out my checkbook, scribbled, and by doing so rented a 1-room apartment with a charming ocean view that Wendy Keegan, my lady friend, never got a chance to sample. That room was where I sat up some nights with my stereo turned down low playing Jimi Hendrix and the Doors, having those occasional thoughts of suicide. They were sophomoric rather than serious, just the fantasies of an overimaginative young man with a heart condition, or so I tell myself now all these years later. But who really knows? When it comes to the past, everyone writes fiction. I tried to reach Wendy from the bus station, but her stepmom said she was out with Renee. When the bus got to Wilmington, I tried again, but she was still out with Renee. I asked Nadine, the stepmom, if she had any idea where they might have gone. Nadine said she didn't. She sounded as if I were the most uninteresting caller she had gotten all day. Maybe all year. Maybe in her life. I got along well enough with Wendy's dad, but Nadine Keegan was never one of my biggest fans. Finally, I was in Boston by then. I got Wendy. She sounded sleepy, although it was only 11 o'clock, which is the shank of the evening to most college students on spring break. I told her I got the job. "Hooray for you," she said. "Are you on your way home?" "Yes, as soon as I get my car, and if it didn't have a flat tire. In those days I was always running on baldies, and it seemed one of them was always going flat." "A spare, you ask? Pretty funny, senor. I could spend the night in Portsmouth instead of going straight home and see you tomorrow if—" "Wouldn't be a good idea. Renee's staying over, and that's about all the company Nadine can take. You know how sensitive she is about company." "Some company, maybe. But I thought Nadine and Renee had always gotten on like a house afire, drinking endless cups of coffee and gossiping about their favorite movie stars as if they were personal friends. But this didn't seem like the time to say so." "Ordinarily, I'd love to talk to you, Dev, but I was getting ready to turn in. Me and Ren had a busy day, shopping and things." She didn't elaborate on the things part, and I found I didn't care to ask about them. Another warning sign. "Love you, Wendy." "Love you, too." That sounded perfunctory rather than fervent. She's just tired, I told myself. I rolled north out of Boston with a distinct feeling of unease. Something about the way she had sounded, the lack of enthusiasm, I don't know. I wasn't sure I wanted to know, but I wondered. Sometimes even now, all these years later, I wonder. She's nothing to me these days but a scar and a memory. Someone who hurt me as young women will hurt young men from time to time. A young woman from another life. Still, I can't help wondering where she was that day, what those things were, and if it was really Renee Sinclair she was with. We could argue about what constitutes the creepiest line in pop music, but for me, it's early Beatles. John Lennon, actually, singing, "I'd rather see you dead, little girl, than to be with another man." I could tell you I never felt that way about Wendy in the aftermath of the breakup, but it would be a lie. It was never a constant thing. But did I think of her with a certain malevolence in the aftermath of the breakup? Yes. There were long and sleepless nights when I thought she deserved something bad, maybe really bad, to happen to her for the way she hurt me. It dismayed me to think that way, but sometimes I did. And then I would think about the man who went into Horror House with his arm around Linda Gray and wearing 2 shirts. The man with the bird on his hand and a straight razor in his pocket. In the spring of 1973, the last year of my childhood when I look back on it, I saw a future in which Wendy Keegan was Wendy Jones, or perhaps Wendy Keegan Jones if she wanted to be more modern and keep her maiden name in the mix. There would be a house on a lake in Maine or New Hampshire, maybe western Massachusetts, filled with the clatter and yell of a couple of little Keegan Joneses. A house where I wrote books that weren't exactly bestsellers, but popular enough to keep us comfortably and were, very important, well-reviewed. Wendy would pursue her dream of opening a small clothing boutique, also well-reviewed, and I would teach a few creative writing seminars, the kind gifted students vie to get into. None of this ever happened, of course. So it was fitting that the last time we were together as a couple was in the office of Professor George B. Nago, a man who never was. In the fall of 1968, returning University of New Hampshire students discovered Professor Nago's office under the stairs in the basement of Hamilton Smith Hall. The space was papered with fake diplomas, peculiar watercolors labeled Albanian art, and seating plans with such names as Elizabeth Taylor, Robert Zimmerman, and Lyndon Beans Johnson penciled into the squares. There were also posted themes from students who never existed. One, I remember, was titled Sex Stars of the Orient. Another was called The Early Poetry of Cthulhu, an Analysis. There were 3 standing ashtrays. A sign taped to the underside of the stairs read, "Professor Nako says the smoking lamp is always lit." There were a couple of ratty easy chairs and an equally ratty sofa, very handy for students in search of a comfy make-out spot. The Wednesday before my last final was unseasonably hot and humid. Around 1 in the afternoon, thunderheads began to build up, and around 4, when Wendy had agreed to meet me in George B. Nako's underground office, the skies opened and it began to pour. I got there first. Wendy showed up 5 minutes later, soaked to the skin but in high good humor. Droplets of water sparkled in her hair. She threw herself into my arms and wriggled against me laughing. Thunder boomed. The few hanging lights in the gloomy basement hallway flickered. "Hug me, hug me, hug me," she said. "That rain is so cold." I warmed her up and she warmed me up. Pretty soon we were tangled together on the ratty sofa, my left hand curled around her and cupping her braless breast, my right far enough up her skirt to brush against silken lace. She let that one stay there for a minute or two, then sat up, moved away from me, and fluffed her hair. "Enough of that," she said primly. "What if Professor Nako came in?" "I don't think that's likely, do you? I was smiling, but below the belt I was feeling a familiar throb. Sometimes Wendy would relieve that throb. She had become quite expert at what we used to call a through-the-pants job, but I didn't think this was going to be one of those days. "One of his students, then," she said, begging for a last-chance passing grade. "Please, Professor Nako, please, 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 I'll do anything." That wasn't likely either, but the chances of being interrupted were good. She was right about that. Students were always dropping by to put up new bogus themes or fresh works of Albanian art. The sofa was make-out friendly, but the locale wasn't. Once, maybe, but not since the understairs nook had become a kind of mythic reference point for students in the College of Liberal Arts. "How was your sociology final?" I asked her. "Okay, I doubt I aced it, but I know I passed it. It's good enough for me, especially since it's the last one." She stretched, fingers touching the zigzag of the stairs above us and lifting her breast most entrancingly. "I'm out of here in," she looked at her watch, "exactly 1 hour and 10 minutes. "You and Renee?" I had no great liking for Wendy's roommate, but knew better than to say so. The one time I had, Wendy and I had a brief, bitter argument in which she accused me of trying to manage her life. "That is correct, sir. She'll drop me at my dad and stepmom's, and in 1 week we're official Filene's employees." She made it sound as if the two of them had landed jobs as pages at the White House, but I held my peace on that, too. I had other concerns. "You're still coming up to Berwick on Saturday, right?" The plan was for her to arrive in the morning, spend the day, and stay over. She'd be in the guest bedroom, of course, but that was only a dozen steps down the hall. Given the fact that we might not see each other again until fall, I thought the possibility of it happening was very strong. Of course, little children believe in Santa Claus, and UNH freshmen sometimes went a whole semester believing that George B. Nako was a real professor teaching real English courses. "Absolutal." She looked around, saw no one, and slipped a hand up my thigh. When it reached the crotch of my jeans, she tugged gently on what she found there. "Come here, you." So I got my through-the-pants job after all. It was one of her better efforts, slow and rhythmic. The thunder rolled, and at some point the sigh of the pouring rain became a hard, hollow rattle as it turned to hail. At the end, she squeezed, heightening and prolonging the pleasure of my orgasm. "Make sure to get good and wet when you go back to your dorm, or the whole world will know exactly what we were doing down here." She bounced to her feet. "I have to go, Dev. I still have some things to pack. I'll pick you up at noon on Saturday. My dad's making his famous chicken casserole for supper." She once more said absolutal. Like standing on her tiptoes to kiss me, it was a Wendy Keegan trademark. Only on Friday night, I got a call from her saying that Renee's plans had changed and they were leaving for Boston 2 days early. "I'm sorry, Dev, but she's my ride." "There's always the bus," I said, already knowing that wasn't going to work. "I promised, honey, and we have tickets for Pippin at the Imperial. Renee's dad got them for us as a surprise." She paused. "Be happy for me. You're going all the way to North Carolina, and I'm happy for you." "Happy," I said. "Roger Wilco." "That's better." Her voice dropped, became confidential. "Next time we're together, I'll make it up to you. Promise." That was a promise she never kept, but one she never had to break either, because I never saw Wendy Keegan after that day in Professor Nako's office. There wasn't even a final phone call filled with tears and accusations. That was on Tom Kennedy's advice. We'll get to him shortly, and it was probably a good thing. Wendy might have been expecting such a call, maybe even wished for it. If so, she was disappointed. I hope she was. All these years later, with those old fevers and deliriums long in my past, I still hope she was. Love leaves scars. I never produced the books I dreamed of, those well-reviewed almost bestsellers, but I did make a pretty good living as a writer, and I count my blessings. Thousands are not so lucky. I've moved steadily up the income ladder to where I am now working at Commercial Flight, a periodical you've probably never heard of. A year after I took over as editor-in-chief, I found myself back on the UNH campus. I was there to attend a 2-day symposium on the future of trade magazines in the 21st century. During a break on the second day, I strolled over to Hamilton Smith Hall on a whim and peeked under the basement stairs. The themes, celebrity-studded seating charts, and Albanian artwork were gone. So were the chairs, the sofa, and the standing ashtrays. And yet someone remembered. Scotch taped to the underside of the stairs, where there had once been a sign proclaiming that the smoking lamp was always lit, I saw a sheet of paper with a single typed line in print so small I had to lean in close and stand on tiptoe in order to read it. Professor Nako now teaches at the Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. Well, why not? Why the fuck not? As for Wendy, your guess is as good as mine. I suppose I could use Google, that 21st century magic 8-ball, to chase her down and find out if she ever realized her dream, the one of owning the exclusive little boutique. But to what purpose? Gone is gone. Over is over. And after my stint in Joyland, just down the beach from a town called Heaven's Bay, let's not forget that, my broken heart seemed a lot less important. Mike and Annie Ross had a lot to do with that. My dad and I ended up eating his famous chicken casserole with no third party in attendance, which was probably all right with Timothy Jones, although he tried to hide it out of respect for me. I knew his feelings about Wendy were about the same as mine about Wendy's friend Renee. At the time, I thought it was because he was a bit jealous of Wendy's place in my life. Now, I think he saw her more clearly than I could. I can't say for sure. We never talked about it. I'm not sure men know how to talk about women in any meaningful way. After the meal was eaten and the dishes washed, we sat on the couch drinking beer, eating popcorn, and watching a movie starring Gene Hackman as a tough cop with a foot fetish. I missed Wendy, probably at that moment listening to the Pippin Company sing Spread a Little Sunshine. But there are advantages to the two-guy scenario, such as being able to belch and fart without trying to cover it up. The next day, my last at home, we went for a walk along the disused railroad tracks that passed through the woods behind the house where I grew up. Mom's hard and fast rule had been that my friends and I had to stay away from those tracks. The last GS and WM freight had passed along them 10 years before, and weeds were growing up between the rusty ties, but that made no difference to Mom. She was convinced that if we played there, one last train, call it the kid-eating special, would go bulleting through and turn us all to paste. Only she was the one who got hit by an unscheduled train. Metastatic breast cancer at the age of 47. One mean fucking express. I'll miss having you around this summer, my dad said. I'll miss you too. Oh, before I forget, he reached into his breast pocket and brought out a check. Be sure to open an account and deposit it first thing. Ask them to speed the clearance if they can. I looked at the amount, not the $500 I'd asked for, but $1,000. Dad, can you afford this? Yes, mostly because you held on to your commons job, and that saved me having to try to make up the difference. Think of it as a bonus. I kissed his cheek, which was scratchy. He hadn't shaved that morning. Thanks. Kid, you're more welcome than you know. He took a handkerchief from his pocket and wiped his eyes matter-of-factly without embarrassment. Sorry about the waterworks. It's hard when your kids go away. Someday you'll find that out for yourself, but hopefully you'll have a good woman to keep you company after they're gone. I thought of Mrs. Shoplaw saying kids are such a risk. Dad, are you going to be okay? He put the handkerchief back in his pocket and gave me a grin, sunny and unforced. Call me once in a while, and I will be. Also, don't let them put you to work climbing over one of their damn roller coasters. That actually sounded sort of exciting, but I told him I wouldn't. But I never heard what he meant to say next, advice or admonition. He pointed. Will you look at that? 50 yards ahead of us, a doe had come out of the woods. She stepped delicately over one rusty GS and WM track and onto the railbed, where the weeds and the goldenrod were so high they brushed against her sides. She paused there, looking at us calmly, ears cocked forward. What I remember about that moment was the silence. No bird sang, no plane went droning overhead. If my mother had been with us, she'd have had her camera and would have been taking pictures like mad. Thinking of that made me miss her in a way I hadn't in years. I gave my father a quick, fierce hug. I love you, Dad. I know, he said. I know. When I looked back, the deer was gone. A day later, so was I. When I got back to the big gray house at the end of Main Street in Heaven's Bay, the sign made of shells had been taken down and put in storage because Mrs. Shoplaw had a full house for the summer. I blessed Lane Hardy for telling me to nail down a place to live. Joyland's summer troops had arrived and every rooming house in town was full. I shared the second floor with Tina Ackerley, the librarian. Mrs. Shoplaw had rented the accommodations on the third floor to a willowy red-headed art major named Aaron Cook and a stocky undergrad from Rutgers named Tom Kennedy. Aaron, who had taken photography courses both in high school and at Bard, had been hired as a Hollywood girl. As for Tom and me, happy helpers, he said. General employment, in other words. That's what the guy Fred Dean checked on my application. You? The same, I said. I think it means we're janitors. I doubt it. Really? Why? Because we're white, he said. And although we did our share of cleanup chores, he turned out to be largely correct. The custodial crew, 20 men and over 30 women who dressed in coveralls with Howie the Happy Hound patches sewn on the breast pockets, were all Haitians and Dominicans, and almost surely undocumented. They lived in their own little village 10 miles inland and were shuttled back and forth in a pair of retired school buses. Tom and I were making $4 an hour, Aaron a little more. God knows what the cleaners were making. They were exploited, of course, and saying that there were undocumented workers all over the South who had it far worse doesn't excuse it, nor does pointing out that it was 40 years ago. Although there was this: they never had to put on the fur. Neither did Aaron. Tom and I did. On the night before our first day at work, the three of us were sitting in the parlor of Maison Chapelaw, getting to know each other and speculating on the summer ahead. As we talked, the moon rose over the Atlantic, as calmly beautiful as the doe my father and I had seen standing on the old railroad tracks. "It's an amusement park, for God's sake," Aaron said. "How tough can it be?" "Easy for you to say," Tom told her. "No one's going to expect you to hose down the whirly cups after every brat in Cub Scout Pack 18 loses his lunch halfway through the ride." "I'll pitch in where I have to," she said. "If it includes mopping up vomit as well as snapping pictures, so be it. I need this job. I've got grad school staring me in the face next year, and I'm exactly 2 steps from broke." "We all ought to try to get on the same team," Tom said, and as it turned out, we did. All the work teams at Joyland had doggy names, and ours was Team Beagle. Just then, Emelina Chapelaw entered the parlor carrying a tray with 5 champagne flutes on it. Miss Ackerley, a beanpole with huge bespectacled eyes that gave her a Joyce Carol Oatsian look, walked beside her, bottle in hand. Tom Kennedy brightened. "Do I spy French ginger ale? That looks just a little too elegant to be supermarket plunk." "Champagne it is," Mrs. Chapelaw said. "Although if you're expecting Moet and Chandon, young Mr. Kennedy, you're in for a disappointment. This isn't cold duck, but it's not the high-price spread either." "I can't speak for my new co-workers," Tom said, "but as someone who educated his palate on Apple's Apple, I don't think I'll be disappointed." Mrs. Chapelaw smiled. "I always mark the beginning of summer this way, for good luck. It seems to work. I haven't lost a seasonal hire yet. Each of you take a glass, please." We did as we were told. "Tina, will you pour?" When the flutes were full, Mrs. Chapelaw raised hers and we raised ours. "Here's to Aaron, Tom, and Devin," she said. "May they have a wonderful summer and wear the fur only when the temperature's below 80 degrees. We clinked glasses and drank. Maybe not the high-price spread, but pretty damned good, and with enough left for us all to have another swallow. This time it was Tom who offered the toast. "Here's to Mrs. Chapelaw, who gives us shelter from the storm." "Why, thank you, Tom. That's lovely. It won't get you a discount on the rent, though." We drank. I set my glass down, feeling just the tiniest bit buzzy. "What is this about wearing the fur?" I asked. Mrs. Chapelaw and Miss Ackerley looked at each other and smiled. It was the librarian who answered, although it wasn't really an answer at all. "You'll find out," she said. "Don't stay up late, children," Mrs. Chapelaw advised. "You've got an early call. Your career in show business awaits." The call was early, 7 a.m., 2 hours before the park opened its doors in another summer. The three of us walked down the beach together. Tom talked most of the way. He always talked. It would have been wearisome if he hadn't been so amusing and relentlessly cheerful. I could see from the way Erin, walking in the surf with her sneakers dangling from the fingers of her left hand, looked at him that she was charmed and fascinated. I envied Tom his ability to do that. He was heavy-set, and at least 3 doors down from handsome, but he was energetic and possessed the gift of gab I sadly lacked. Remember the old joke about the starlet who was so clueless she fucked the writer? "Man, how much do you think the people who own these places are worth?" he asked, waving an arm at the houses on Beach Row. We were just passing the big green one that looked like a castle, but there was no sign of the woman and the boy in the wheelchair that day. Annie and Mike Ross came later. "Millions, probably," Aaron said. "It ain't the Hamptons, but as my dad would say, it ain't cheeseburgers." "The amusement park probably brings the property values down a little," I said. I was looking at Joyland's 3 most distinctive landmarks silhouetted against the blue morning sky: Thunderball, Delirium Shaker, Carolina Spin. "No, you don't understand the rich guy mindset," Tom said. "It's like when they pass bums looking for handouts on the street. They just erase them from their field of vision." "Bums? What bums?" "And that park? Same deal." "What park?" "People who own these houses live, like, on another plane of existence." He stopped, shading his eyes and looking at the green Victorian that was going to play such a large part in my life that fall, after Aaron Cook and Tom Kennedy, by then a couple, had gone back to school. That one's going to be mine. I'll be expecting to take possession on June 1st, 1987. I'll bring the champagne, Aaron said, and we all laughed. I saw Joyland's entire crew of summer hires in one place for the first and last time that morning. We gathered in Surf Auditorium, the concert hall where all those B-list country acts and aging rockers performed. There were almost 200 of us. Most, like Tom, Aaron, and me, were college students willing to work for peanuts. Some of the full-timers were there as well. I saw Rosie Gold, today dressed for work in her gypsy duds and dangly earrings. Lane Hardy was up on stage, placing a mic at the podium and then checking it with a series of thudding finger taps. His derby was present and accounted for, cocked at its usual just-so angle. I don't know how he picked me out of all those milling kids, but he did, and sketched me a little salute off the tilted brim of his lid. I sent him one right back. He finished his work, nodded, jumped off the stage, and took the seat Rosie had been saving for him. Fred Dean walked briskly out from the wings. "Be seated, please. All of you be seated. Before you get your team assignments, the owner of Joyland and your employer would like to say a few words. Please give a hand to Mr. Bradley Easterbrook." We did as we were told, and an old man emerged from the wings, walking with the careful, high-stepping strides of someone with bad hips or a bad back or both. He was tall and amazingly thin, dressed in a black suit that made him look more like an undertaker than a man who owned an amusement park. His face was long, pale, covered with bumps and moles. Shaving must have been torture for him, but he had a clean one. Ebony hair that had surely come out of a bottle and was swept back from his deeply lined brow. He stood beside the podium, his enormous hands, they seemed to be nothing but knuckles, clasped before him. His eyes were deep-set in pouched sockets. Age looked at youth, and youth's applause first weakened, then died. I'm not sure what we expected. Possibly a mournful foghorn voice telling us that Red Death would soon hold sway over all. Then he smiled, and it lit him up like a jukebox. You could almost hear a sigh of relief rustle through the summer hires. I found out later that this was the summer Bradley Easterbrook turned 93. "You guys," he said, "welcome to Joyland." And then before stepping behind the podium, he actually bowed to us. He took several seconds adjusting the mic, which produced a series of amplified squeaks and skronks. He never took his sunken eyes from us as he did it. "I see many returning faces. Thing that always makes me happy. For you greenies, I hope this will be the best summer of your life, the yardstick by which you will judge all your future employment. That is no doubt an extravagant wish, but anyone who runs a place like this year in and year out must have a wide streak of extravagance. For certain, you'll never have another job like it." He surveyed us, giving the poor Mike's articulated neck another twist as he did so. "In a few moments, Mr. Dean and Mrs. Brenda Rafferty, who is queen of the front office, will give you team assignments. There will be 7 of you to a team, and you will be expected to act as a team and work as a team. Your team's tasks will be assigned by your team leader and will vary from week to week, sometimes from day to day. If variety is the spice of life, you will find the next 3 months very spicy indeed. I hope you will keep one thought foremost in your mind, young ladies and gentlemen. Will you do that?" He paused as if expecting us to answer, but nobody made a sound. We only looked at him. A very old man in a black suit and a white shirt open at the collar. When he spoke again, it might have been himself he was talking to, at least to begin with. "This is a badly broken world, full of wars and cruelty and senseless tragedy. Every human being who inhabits it has served his or her portion of unhappiness and wakeful nights. Those of you who don't already know that will come to know it. Given such sad but undeniable facts of the human condition, you have been given the priceless gift this summer. You are here to sell fun. In exchange for the hard-earned dollars of your customers, you will parcel out happiness. Children will go home and dream of what they saw here and what they did here. I hope you will remember that, when the work is hard, as it sometimes will be, or when people are rude, as they often will be, or when you feel your best efforts have gone unappreciated. This is a different world, one that has its own customs and its own language, which we simply call the talk. You'll begin learning it today as you learn to talk the talk. You'll learn to walk the walk. I'm not going to explain that, because it can't be explained. It can only be learned. Tom leaned close to me and whispered, "Talk the talk, walk the walk. Did we just wander into an AA meeting?" I hushed him. I had come in expecting to get a list of commandments, mostly thou shalt nots. Instead, I had gotten a kind of rough poetry. I was delighted. Bradley Easterbrook surveyed us, then suddenly displayed those horsey teeth in another grin. This one looked big enough to eat the world. Aaron Cook was staring at him raptly. So were most of the new summer hires. It was the way students stare at a teacher who offers a new and possibly wonderful way of looking at reality. "I hope you'll enjoy your work here. But when you don't, when, for instance, it's your turn to wear the fur, try to remember how privileged you are. In a sad and dark world, we are a little island of happiness. Many of you already have plans for your lives. You hope to become doctors, lawyers, I don't know, politicians." "Oh, God, no!" someone shouted to general laughter. I would have said Easterbrook's grin could not possibly have widened, but it did. Tom was shaking his head, but he had also given in. "Okay, now I get it," he whispered in my ear. "This guy is the Jesus of fun." "You'll have interesting, fruitful lives, my young friends. You'll do many good things and have many remarkable experiences. But I hope you'll always look back on your time in Joyland as something special. We don't sell furniture. We don't sell cars. We don't sell land or houses or retirement funds. We have no political agenda. We sell fun. Never forget that. Thank you for your attention. Now go forth." He stepped away from the podium, gave another bow, and left the stage in that same painful high-stepping stride. He was gone almost before the applause began. It was one of the best speeches I ever heard, because it was truth rather than horse shit. I mean, listen. How many rubes can put sold fun for 3 months in 1973 on their resume? All the team leaders were longtime Joyland employees who worked the carny circuit as showies in the off-season. Most were also on the Park Services Committee, which meant they had to deal with the state and federal regulations, both very loose in 1973, and field customer complaints. That summer, most of the complaints were about the new no-smoking policy. Our team leader was a peppy little guy named Gary Allen, a 70-something who ran the Annie Oakley Shooting Gallery, only none of us called it that after the first day. In the talk, a shooting gallery was a bang shy, and Gary was the bang shy agent. The 7 of us on Team Beagle met him at his joint, where he was setting out rifles on chains. My first official Joyland job, along with Aaron, Tom, and the other 4 guys on the team, was putting the prizes on the shelves. The ones that got pride of place were the big fuzzy stuffed animals that hardly anyone ever won, although, Gary said, he was careful to give out at least one every evening when the tip was hot. "I like the marks," he said. "Yes, I do, and the marks I like the best are the points, by which I mean the purty girls, and the points I like the best are the ones who wear the low-cut tops and bend forward to shoot like this." He snatched up the .22 modified to shoot BBs. It also had been modified to make a loud and satisfying bang with each trigger pull, and leaned forward to demonstrate. "When a guy does that, I notify him that they're fouling the line. The points? Never." Ronnie Houston, a bespectacled, anxious-looking young man wearing a Florida State University cap, said, "I don't see any foul line, Mr. Allen." Gary looked at him, hands fisted on his non-existent hips. His jeans seemed to be staying up in defiance of gravity. "Listen up, son. I got 3 things for you. Ready?" Ronnie nodded. He looked like he wanted to take notes. He also looked like he wanted to hide behind the rest of us. "First thing, you can call me Gary or Pops or come here, you old son of a bitch, but I ain't no school teacher, so can the mister. Second thing, I never want to see that fucking schoolboy hat on your head again. Third thing, the foul line is wherever I say the foul line is on any given night. I can do that because it's in my mind." He tapped one sunken vein gnarled temple to make his point perfectly clear, then waved at the prizes, the targets, and the counter where the conies, the rubes, laid down their mooch. "This is all in my mind. The shy's mental. Get it?" Ronnie didn't, but he nodded vigorously. "Now whip off that turdish-looking schoolboy hat. Get you a Joyland visor or a Howie the Happy Hound dog top. Make it job 1. Ronnie whipped off his FSU lid with alacrity and stuck it in his back pocket. Later that day, I believe within the hour, he replaced it with a Howie cap, known in the talk as a dog top. After 3 days of ribbing and being called Greenie, he took his new dog top out to the parking lot, found a nice greasy spot, and trompled it for a while. When he put it back on, it had the right look. Or almost. Ronnie Houston never got the complete right look. Some people were just destined to be greenies forever. I remember Tom sidling up to him one day and suggesting that he needed to piss on it a little to give it that final touch that means so much. When he saw Ronnie was on the verge of taking him seriously, Tom backpedaled and said just soaking it in the Atlantic would achieve the same effect. Meanwhile, Pops was surveying us. "Speaking of good-looking ladies, I perceive we have one among us." Aaron smiled modestly. "Hollywood girl, darling?" "That's what Mr. Dean said I'd be doing, yes." "Then you want to go see Brenda Rafferty. She's second in command around here, and she's also the Park Girl mom. She'll get you fitted up with one of those cute green dresses. Tell her you want yours extra short." "The hell I will, you old lecher," Aaron said, and promptly joined him when he threw back his head and bellowed laughter. "Pert? Sassy? Do I like it? I do. When you're not snapping pics of the conies, you come on back to your pops and I'll find you something to do. But change out of that dress first. You don't want to get grease or sawdust on it. Capiche?" "Yes," Aaron said. She was all business again. Pops Allen looked at his watch. "Park opens in 1 hour, kiddies, and then you'll learn while you earn. Start with the rides." He pointed to us one by one, naming rides. I got the Carolina Spin, which pleased me. "Got time for a question or two, but no more than that. Anybody got one, or are you good to go?" I raised my hand. He nodded at me and asked my name. "Devin Jones, sir." "You call me sir again and you're fired, lad." "Devin Jones, Pops." I certainly wasn't going to call him "Come here, you old son of a bitch," at least not yet. Maybe when we knew each other better. "There you go," he said, nodding. "What's on your mind, Jonesy, besides that fine head of red hair?" "What's Carney from Carney mean?" "Means you're like old man Easterbrook. His father worked the Carney circuit back in the Dust Bowl days, and his grandfather worked it back when they had a fake Indian show featuring Big Chief Yowlatcha." "You got to be kidding," Tom exclaimed almost exultantly. Pops gave him a cool stare that settled Tom down, a thing not always easy to do. "Son, do you know what history is?" Stuff that happened in the past?" "Nope," he said, tying on his canvas change belt. "History is the collective and ancestral shit of the human race. A great big and ever-growing pile of crap. Right now we're standing at the top of it. But pretty soon we'll be buried under the doo-doo of generations yet to come. That's why your folks' clothes look so funny in old photographs, to name but a single example. And as someone who's destined to be buried beneath the shit of your children and grandchildren, I think you should be just a little more forgiving." Tom opened his mouth, probably to make a smart comeback, then wisely closed it again. George Preston, another member of Team Beagle, spoke up. "Are you Carney from Carney?" "Nope. My daddy was a cattle rancher in Oregon. Now my brothers run the spread. I'm the black sheep of the family, and damn proud of it. Okay, if there's nothing else, it's time to quit this foolishness and get down to business." "Can I ask one more thing?" Aaron asked. "Only because you're purty." "What does wearing the fur mean?" Pops Allen smiled. He placed his hands on the mooch counter of his shy. "Tell me, little lady, do you have an idea what it might mean?" "Well, yes." The smile widened into a grin that showed every yellowing fang in our new team leader's mouth. "Then you're probably right." What did I do at Joyland that summer? Everything. Sold tickets, pushed a popcorn wagon, sold funnel cakes, cotton candy, and a zillion hot dogs, which we called hound dogs, you probably knew that. It was a hound dog that got my picture in the paper, as a matter of fact, although I wasn't the guy who sold the unlucky pup. George Preston did. I worked as a lifeguard, both on the beach and at Happy Lake, the indoor pool where the splash and crash water slide ended. I line danced with the other members of Team Beagle to Bird Dance Beat, Does Your Chewing Gum Lose Its Flavor on the Bedpost Overnight, Rippy Rappy, Zippy Zappy, and a dozen other nonsense songs in the Wiggle Waggle Village, where I also did time, most of it happy, as an unlicensed childminder. In the Wiggle Waggle, the approved rallying cry when faced with a bawling kitty was, "Let's turn that frown upside down." And I not only liked it, I got good at it. It was in the Wiggle Waggle that I decided having kids at some point in the future was an actual good idea, rather than a windy-flavored daydream. I, and all the other happy helpers, learned to race from one side of Joyland to the other in nothing flat, using either the alleys behind the shies, joints, rides, and concessions, or one of the 3 service tunnels known as Joyland Under, Hound Dog Under, and the Boulevard. I hauled trash by the ton, usually driving it in an electric cart down the boulevard, a shadowy and sinister thoroughfare lit by ancient fluorescent bar lights that stuttered and buzzed. I even worked a few times as a roadie, hauling amps and monitors when one of the acts showed up late and unsupported. I learned to talk the talk. Some of it, like Bally for Free Show or Gone Larry for a Ride that had broken down, was pure Carney, and as old as the hills. Other terms, like points for purty girls and fumps for the chronic complainers, were strictly Joyland lingo. I suppose other parks have their own version of the talk, but underneath it's always Carney from Carney. A hammer squash is a coney, usually a fump, who bitches about having to wait in line. The last hour of the day, at Joyland, that was 10 p.m. to 11, was the blow-off. A coney who loses at some shy and wants his mooch back is a mooch hammer. The Donaker is the bathroom, as in, "Hey, Jonesy, hustle down to the Donaker by the moon rocket. Some dumb fump just puked in one of the sinks." Running the concessions, known as joints, came easy to most of us, and really, anyone who can make change is qualified to push the popcorn wagon or work the counter of a souvenir shop. Learning to ride jock wasn't much more difficult, but it was scary at first, because there were lives in your hands, many those of little children. "Here for your lesson?" Lane Hardy asked me when I joined him at the Carolina Spin. "Good, just in time. Park opens in 20 minutes. We do it the way they do it in the Navy. See one, do one, teach one. Right now, that heavy-set kid you were standing next to? Tom Kennedy? Okay, right now Tom's over learning the devil wagons. At some point, probably this very day, he's going to teach you how to run the ride. You'll teach him how to run the spin, which, by the way, is an Aussie wheel, meaning it runs counterclockwise." "Is that important?" "Nope," he said, "but I think it's interesting. There are only a few in the States. It has 2 speeds, slow and really slow, because it's a grandma ride." Correctamundo. He demonstrated with the long stick shift I had seen him operating on the day I got my job, then made me take over the stick with the bicycle hand grip at the top. "Feel it click when it's in gear?" "Yes." "Here's stop." He put his hand over mine and pulled the lever all the way up. This time the click was harder, and the enormous wheel stopped at once, the cars rocking gently. "With me so far?" "I guess so. Listen, don't I need a permit or a license or something to run this thing?" "You got a license, don't you?" "Sure, a Maine driver's license, but in South Carolina, valid DL is all you need. They'll get around to additional regulations in time. They always do. But for this year, at least, you're good to go. Now pay attention, because this is the most important part. Do you see that yellow stripe on the side of the housing?" I did. It was just to the right of the ramp leading up to the ride. "Each car has a Happy Hound decal on the door. When you see the hound lining up with the yellow stripe, you pull stop, and there'll be a car right where the folks get on." He yanked the lever forward again. "See?" I said I did. "Until the wheels tips." "What?" "Loaded. Tips means loaded. Don't ask me why. Until the wheels tips, you just alternate between super slow and stop. Once you've got a full load, which you'll have most of the time if we have a good season, you go to the normal slow speed. They get 4 minutes. He pointed to his suitcase radio. "It's my boomy, but the rule is when you run the ride, you control the tunes. Just no real blasting rock and roll, Who, Zep, Stone, stuff like that until after the sun goes down. Got it?" "Yeah. What about letting them off?" "Exactly the same. Super slow, stop. Super slow, stop. Always line up the yellow stripe with the Happy Hound. You'll always have a car right at the ramp. You should be able to get 10 spins an hour. If the wheel's loaded each time, that's over 700 customers, which comes to almost a D note." "Which is what in English?" 500. I looked at him uncertainly. "I won't really have to do this, will I? I mean, it's your ride." "It's Brad Easterbrook's ride, kiddo. They all are. I'm just another employee. Although I've been here a few years, I run the hoister most of the time, but not all the time. And hey, stop sweating. There are carnies where half-drunk bikers covered with tattoos do this. If they can, you can." "If you say so." Lane pointed. "Gates are open and here come the conies rolling down Joyland Avenue. You're going to stick with me for the first 3 rides. Later on, you teach the rest of your team, and that includes your Hollywood girl. Okay?" It wasn't even close to okay. I was supposed to send people 170 feet in the air after a 5-minute tutorial? It was insane. He gripped my shoulder. "You can do this, Jonesy. So never mind if you say so. Tell me it's okay." "It's okay," I said. "Good boy." He turned on his radio, now hooked to a speaker high on the spin's frame. The Hollies began to sing Long Cool Woman in a Black Dress as Lane took a pair of rawhide gloves from the back pocket of his jeans. "And get you a pair of these. You're going to need them. Also, you better start learning how to pitch." He bent down, grabbed a handheld mic from the ever-present orange crate, put one foot up and began to work the crowd. "Hey, folks, welcome in. Time to take a little spin. Hurry, hurry. Summer won't last forever. Take a ride upstairs where the air is rare. This is where the fun begins. Step over here and ride the spin." He lowered the mic and gave me a wink. That's my pitch, more or less. Give me a drink or three and it gets a lot better. You work out your own. The first time I ran the spin by myself, my hands were shaking with terror. But by the end of the first week, I was running it like a pro, although Lane said my pitch needed a lot of work. I was also capable of running the whirly cups and the devil wagons, although ride jockeying the latter came down to little more than pushing the green start button and the red stop button, and getting the cars untangled when the rubes got them stuck together against the rubber bumpers, which was at least 4 times during each 4-minute ride. Only when you were running the devil wagons, you didn't call them rides. Each run was a spree. I learned the talk. I learned the geography both above and below ground. I learned how to run a joint, take over a shy, and award plushies to good-looking points. It took a week or so to get most of it down, and it was 2 weeks before I started getting comfortable. Wearing the fur, however, I understood by 12:30 on my first day, and it was just my luck, good or bad, that Bradley Easterbrook happened to be in the Wiggle Waggle village at the time, sitting on a bench and eating his usual lunch of bean sprouts and tofu. Hardly amusement park chow, but let's keep in mind that the man's food processing system hadn't been new since the days of bathtub gin and flappers. After my first impromptu performance as Howie the Happy Hound, I wore the fur a lot. Because I was good at it, you see. And Mr. Easterbrook knew I was good at it. I was wearing it a month or so later when I met the little girl in the red hat on Joyland Avenue. That first day was a madhouse, all right. I ran the Carolina spin with Lane until 10 o'clock, then alone for the next 90 minutes while he rushed around the park putting out opening day fires. By then, I no longer believed the wheel was going to malfunction and start running out of control like the merry-go-round in the old Alfred Hitchcock movie. The most terrifying thing was how trusting people were. Not a single dad with kids in tow detoured to my pitch to ask if I knew what I was doing. I didn't get as many spins as I should have. I was concentrating so hard on that damn yellow stripe that I gave myself a headache, but every spin I did get was tipsed. Erin came by once, pretty as a picture in her green Hollywood girl dress, and took pictures of some of the family groups waiting to get on. She took one of me, too. I still have it somewhere. When the wheel was turning again, she gripped me by the arm, little beads of sweat standing out on her forehead, her lips parted in a smile, her eyes shining. "Is this great or what?" she asked. "As long as I don't kill anybody, yeah," I said. "If some little kid falls out of a car, just make sure you catch him." Then, having given me something new to obsess about, she jogged off in search of new photo subjects. There was no shortage of people willing to pose for a gorgeous redhead on a summer morning, and she was right, actually. It was pretty great. Around 11:30, Lane came back. By that point, I was comfortable enough ride-jacking the spin to turn the rudimentary controls over to him with some reluctance. "Who's your team leader, Jonesy? Gary Allen?" "That's right." "Well, go on over to his bang shy and see what he's got for you. If you're lucky, he'll send you down to the boneyard for lunch." "What's the boneyard?" "Where the help goes when they've got time off. Most carnies, it's the parking lot or out behind the trucks, but Joyland's luxe. There's a nice break room where the Boulevard and Hound Dog Under connect. Take the stairs between the balloon pitch and the knife show. You'll like it, but you only eat if Pop says it's okay. I ain't getting in Dutch with that old bastard. His team is his team. I got my own. You got a dinner bucket?" "Didn't know I was supposed to bring one." He grinned. "You'll learn. For today, stop at Ernie's Joints, the fried chicken place with the big plastic rooster on top. Show him your Joyland ID card and he'll give you the company discount." I did end up eating fried chicken at Ernie's, but not until 2 that afternoon. Pop had other plans for me. "Go by the costume shop. It's a trade between park services and the carpentry shop. Tell Dottie Lassen I sent you. Damn woman's busting her girdle." "Want me to help you reload first?" The shooting gallery was also tips, the counter crowded with high school kids anxious to win those elusive plushies. More rubes, so I was already thinking of them, were lined up 3 deep behind the current shooters. Pop Allen's hands never stopped moving as he talked to me. "What I want is for you to get on your pony and ride. I was doing this shit long before you were born. Which one are you anyway, Jonesy or Kennedy? I know you're not a dingbat in the college boy hat, but beyond that I can't remember." "I'm Jonesy." "Well, Jonesy, you're going to spend an edifying hour in the Wiggle Waggle. It'll be edifying for the kiddies anyhow. For you, maybe not so much." He bared his yellow fangs in his trademark Pop Allen grin, the one that made him look like an elderly shark. "Enjoy that fursuit." The costume shop was also a madhouse, filled with women running every which way. Dottie Lassen, a skinny lady who needed a girdle like I needed elevator shoes, fell on me the second I walked through the door. She hooked her long-nailed fingers into my armpit and dragged me past clown costumes, cowboy costumes, a huge Uncle Sam suit with stilts leaning beside it against the wall, a couple of princess outfits, a rack of Hollywood girl dresses, and a rack of old-fashioned gay 90s bathing suits, which I found out we were condemned to wear when on lifeguard duty. At the very back of her crowded little empire were a dozen deflated dogs. Howie's, in fact, complete with the happy hound's delighted, stupid, and loving-it grin, his big blue eyes, and his fuzzy cocked ears. Zippers ran down the backs of the suits from the neck to the base of the tail. "Christ, you're a big one," Dottie said. "Thank God I got the extra-large mended last week. The last kid who wore it ripped it out under both arms. There was a hole under the tail, too. He must have been eating Mexican food." She snatched the XL Howie off the rack and slammed it into my arms. The tail curled around my leg like a python. "You're going to the wiggle waggle, and I mean chop fucking chop. Butch Hadley was supposed to take care of that from Team Corgi, or so I thought, but he says his whole team's out with the key to the Midway." I had no idea what that meant, and Dottie gave me no time to ask. She rolled her eyes in a way that indicated either good humor or the onset of madness, and continued, "You say, what's the big deal? I'll tell you what's the big deal, Greenie. Mr. Easterbrook usually eats his lunch there. He always eats it there on the first day we're running full out, and if there's no Howie, he'll be very disappointed." "Like as in someone will get fired?" "No, as in very disappointed. Stick around a while and you'll know that's plenty bad enough. No one wants to disappoint him because he's a great man, which is nice, I suppose, but what's more important is he's a good guy. In this business, good guys are scarcer than hen's teeth." She looked at me and made a sound like a small animal with its paw caught in a trap. "Dear Christ, you're a big one, and green as grass, but it can't be helped." I had a billion questions, but my tongue was frozen. All I could do was stare at the deflated Howie, who stared back at me. Do you know what I felt like just then? James Bond in the movie where he's tied to some kind of crazy exercise gadget. "Do you expect me to talk?" he asked Goldfinger, and Goldfinger replies with chilling good humor, "No, Mr. Bond, I expect you to die." I was tied to a happiness machine instead of an exercise machine, but hey, same idea. No matter how hard I worked to keep up on that first day, the damn thing just kept going faster. "Take it down to the boneyard, kid. Please tell me you know where that is." "I do. Thank God Lane had told me." "Well, that's one for the home team anyway. When you get there, strip down to your undies. If you wear more than that while you're wearing the fur, you'll roast. And anybody ever tell you the first rule of Carney, kid?" I thought so, but it seemed safer to keep my mouth shut. "Always know where your wallet is. This park isn't anywhere near as sleazy as some of the places I worked in the flower of my youth, thank God, but that's still the first rule. Give it to me. I'll keep it for you." I handed over my wallet without protest. "Now go, but even before you strip down, drink a lot of water. I mean until your belly feels swollen. And don't eat anything. I don't care how hungry you are. I've had kids get heat stroke and barf in Howie suits, and the results ain't pretty. Suit almost always has to be thrown out. Drink, strip, put on a fur, get someone to zip you up, then hustle down to the boulevard of the Wiggle Waggle. There's a sign. You can't miss it." I looked doubtfully at Howie's big blue eyes. "They're screen mesh," she said. "Don't worry, you'll see fine." "But what do I do?" She looked at me at first unsmiling, then her face, not just her mouth and eyes, but her whole face broke into a grin. The laugh that accompanied it was this weird honk that seemed to come through her nose. "You'll be fine," she said. People kept telling me that. "It's method acting, kiddo. Just find your inner dog." There were over a dozen new hires and a handful of old-timers having lunch in the boneyard when I arrived. 2 of the greenies were Hollywood girls, but I had no time to be modest. After gulping a bellyful from the drinking fountain, I shucked down to my jockeys and sneakers. I shook out the Howie costume and stepped in, making sure to get my feet all the way down in the back paws. "Fur!" one of the old-timers yelled and slammed a fist down on the table. "Fur! Fur! Fur!" The others took it up, and the boneyard rang with the chant as I stood there in my underwear with a deflated Howie puddled around my shins. It was like being in the middle of a prison mess hall riot. Rarely have I felt so exquisitely stupid, or so oddly heroic. It was showbiz, after all, and I was stepping into the breach. For a moment, it didn't matter that I didn't know what the fuck I was doing. "Fur! Fur! Fur! Fur!" "Somebody zip me the hell up," I shouted. "I have to get down to the Wiggle Waggle post-haste." One of the girls did the honors, and I immediately saw why wearing the fur was such a big deal. The boneyard was air-conditioned. All of Joyland under was, but I was already popping hard sweat. One of the old-timers came over and gave me a kindly pat on my Howie head. "I'll give you a ride, son," he said. "Cart's right there. Jump in." "Thanks." My voice was muffled. "Woof, woof, Bowser!" someone called, and they all cracked up. We rolled down the boulevard with its spooky, stuttering fluorescent lights, a grizzled old guy in janitor greens with a giant blue-eyed German shepherd riding co-pilot. As he pulled up at the stairs marked with an arrow and the painted legend "Wigwag" on the cinder blocks, he said, "Don't talk. Howie never talks, just gives hugs and pats him on the head. Good luck, and if you start feeling all swimmy, get the hell out. Kids don't want to see Howie flop over with heat stroke." "I have no idea what I'm supposed to do," I said. "Nobody's told me." I don't know if that guy was Carney from Carney or not, but he knew something about Joyland. "It don't matter. The kids all love Howie. They'll know what to do." I clambered out of the cart, almost tripped over my tail, then grasped the string in my left front paw and gave it a yank to get the damn thing out of my way. I staggered up the stairs and fumbled with the lever of the door at the top. I could hear music, something vaguely remembered from my early childhood. I finally got the lever to go down. The door opened and bright June light flooded through Howie's screen mesh blue eyes, momentarily dazzling me. The music was louder now, being piped from overhead speakers, and I could put a name to it. The Hokey Pokey, that all-time nursery school hit. I saw swings, slides, and teeter-totters, an elaborate jungle gym, and a roundy-round being pushed by a greenie wearing long fuzzy rabbit ears and a powder-puffed tail stuck to the seat of his jeans. The Choo-Choo Wiggle, a toy train capable of dazzling speeds approaching 4 miles an hour, steamed by, loaded with little kids dutifully waving to their camera-toting parents. About a gazillion kids were boiling around, watched over by plenty of summer hires, plus a couple of full-time personnel who probably did have child care licenses. These two, a man and a woman, were wearing sweatshirts that read, "We love happy kids." Dead ahead was the long daycare building called Howie's Howdy House. I saw Mr. Easterbrook, too. He was sitting on a bench beneath a Joyland umbrella, dressed in his mortician's suit and eating his lunch with chopsticks. He didn't see me at first. He was looking at a crocodile line of children being led toward the Howdy House by a couple of greenies. The kiddies could be parked there, I found this out later, for a maximum of 2 hours while the parents either took their older kids on the bigger rides or had lunch at Rock Lobster, the park's Class A restaurant. I also found out later that the eligibility ages for Howdy House ran from 3 to 6. Many of the children now approaching looked pretty mellow, probably because they were daycare vets from families where both parents worked. Others weren't taking it so well. Maybe they'd managed to keep a stiff upper lip at first, hearing Mommy and Daddy say they'd be back together in just an hour or two, as if a 4-year-old has any real concept of what an hour is. But now they were on their own, in a noisy and confusing place filled with strangers and Mommy and Daddy nowhere in sight. Some of those were crying. Buried in the Howie costume, looking out through the screen mesh that served as eye holes and already sweating like a pig, I thought I was witnessing an act of uniquely American child abuse. Why would you bring your kid, your toddler for Christ's sake, to the jangling sprawl of an amusement park only to fob him or her off on a crew of strange babysitters even for a little while? The greenies in charge could see the tears spreading. Toddler angst is just another childhood disease, really, like measles, but their faces said they had no idea what to do about it. Why would they? It was day 1, and they had been thrown into the mix with as little preparation as I had when Lane Hardy walked away and left me in charge of a gigantic Ferris wheel. But at least kids under 8 can't get on the spin without an adult, I thought. These little buggers are pretty much on their own. I didn't know what to do either, but felt I had to try something. I walked toward the line of kids with my front paws up and wagging my tail like mad. I couldn't see it, but I could feel it. And just as the first 2 or 3 saw me and pointed me out, inspiration struck. It was the music. I stopped at the intersection of Jellybean Road and Candy Cane Avenue, which happened to be directly beneath 2 of the blaring speakers. Standing almost 7 feet from paws to furry-cocked ears, I'm sure I was quite a presence. I bowed to the kids who were now all staring with open mouths and wide eyes. As they watched, I began to do the hokey pokey. Sorrow and terror over lost parents were forgotten, at least for the time being. They laughed, some with tears still gleaming on their cheeks. They didn't quite dare approach, not while I was doing my clumsy little dance, but they crowded forward. There was wonder, but no fear. They all knew Howie. Those from the Carolinas had seen his afternoon TV show, and even those from far-flung, exotic locales like St. Louis and Omaha had seen brochures and advertisements on the Saturday morning cartoons. They understood that although Howie was a big dog, he was a good dog. He'd never bite. He was their friend. I put my left foot in, I put my left foot out. I put my left foot in and I shook it all about. I did the hokey pokey and I turned myself around because, as almost every little kid in America knows, that's what it's all about. I forgot about being hot and uncomfortable. I didn't think about how my undershorts were sticking in the crack of my ass. Later I would have a bitch of a heat headache, but just then I felt okay. Really good, in fact. And you know what? Wendy Keegan never once crossed my mind. When the music changed to the Sesame Street theme, I quit dancing, dropped to one padded knee, and held up my arms like Al Jolson. "Howie!" a little girl screamed, and all these years later I can still hear the perfect note of rapture in her voice. She ran forward, pink skirt swirling around her chubby knees. That did it. The orderly crocodile line dissolved. "The kids will know what to do," the old-timer had said, and how right he was. First they swarmed me. Then they knocked me over, then they gathered around me, hugging and laughing. The little girl in the pink skirt kissed my snout repeatedly, shouting, "Howie! Howie! Howie!" as she did it. Some of the parents who had ventured into the wiggle-waggle to snap pictures were approaching, equally fascinated. I paddled my paws to get some space, rolled over, and got up before they could crush me with their love. Although just then I was loving them right back. For such a hot day, it was pretty cool. I didn't notice Mr. Easterbrook reach into the jacket of his mortician's suit, bring out a walkie-talkie, and speak into it briefly. All I knew was that the Sesame Street music suddenly cut out and the hokey-pokey started up again. I put my right paw in and my right paw out. The kids got into it right away, their eyes never leaving me, not wanting to miss the next move and be left behind. Pretty soon, we were all doing the hokey-pokey at the intersection of Jelly Bean and Candy Cane. The Greenie Minders joined in. I'll be goddamned if some of the parents didn't join in as well. I even put my long tail in and pulled my long tail out. Laughing madly, the kids turned around and did the same, only with invisible tails. As the song wound down, I made an extravagant "come on, kids" gesture with my left paw, inadvertently yanking my tail up so stringently I almost tore the troublesome fucker off, and led them toward the Howdy House. They followed as willingly as the children of Hamelin followed the Pied Piper, and not one of them was crying. That actually wasn't the best day of my brilliant, if I do say so myself, and I do, career as Howie the Happy Hound, but it was right up there. When they were safely inside Howdy House, the little girl in the pink skirt stood in the door long enough to wave me a bye-bye. I turned around and the world seemed to keep right on turning when I stopped. Sweat sheeted into my eyes, doubling Wiggle-Waggle Village and everything in it. I wavered on my back paws. The entire performance, from my first hokey-pokey moves to the little girl waving bye-bye, had only taken 7 minutes, 9 tops. But I was totally fried. I started trudging back the way I'd come, not sure what to do next. "Son," a voice said, "over here." It was Mr. Easterbrook. He was holding open a door in the back of the Wishing Well snack bar. It might have been the door I'd come through, probably was, but then I'd been too anxious and excited to notice. He ushered me inside, closed the door behind us, and pulled down the zipper at the back of the costume. Howie's surprisingly heavy head fell off of my own, and my damp skin drank up the blessed air conditioning. My skin, still winter white, it wouldn't stay that way for long, rashed out in goosebumps. I took big, deep breaths. "Sit down on the steps," he said. "I'll call for a ride in a minute, but right now you need to get your wind back. The first few turns as Howie are always difficult, and the performance you just gave was particularly strenuous. It was also extraordinary. Thanks." It was all I could manage. Until I was back inside the cool quiet, I hadn't realized how close to my limit I was. "Thanks very much. Head down if you feel faint." "Not faint. Got a headache, though." I snaked one arm out of Howie and wiped my face, which was dripping. "You kind of rescued me." "Maximum time wearing Howie on a hot day, I'm talking July and August when the humidity is high and the temperature goes into the 90s, is 15 minutes, Mr. Easterbrook said. "If someone tries to tell you different, send them directly to me, and you'll be well advised to swallow a couple of salt pills. We want you summer kids to work hard, but we don't want to kill you." He took out his walkie-talkie and spoke briefly and quietly. 5 minutes later, the old-timer showed up again in his cart with a couple Anacin and a bottle of blessedly cold water. In the meantime, Mr. Easterbrook sat next to me, lowering himself to the top step leading down to the boulevard with a glassy care that made me a trifle nervous. "What's your name, son?" "Devin Jones, sir." "Do they call you Jonesy?" He didn't wait for me to reply. "Of course they do. It's the Carney way, and that's all Joyland is, really. A thinly disguised Carney. Places like this won't last much longer. The Disneys and the Knott's Berry Farms are going to rule the amusement world, except maybe down here in Middle South. Tell me, aside from the heat, how did you enjoy your first turn wearing the fur? I liked it. Because? Because some of them were crying, I guess. He smiled. And? Pretty soon all of them would have been crying, but I stopped it. Yes, you did the hokey pokey. Splinter of genius. How did you know it would work? I didn't, but actually I did. On some level, I did. He smiled. At Joyland, we throw our new hires, our greenies into the mix without much in the way of preparation, because in some people, some gifted people, it encourages a sort of spontaneity that's very special and valuable, both to us and to our patrons. Did you learn something about yourself just now? Geez, I don't know, maybe. But can I say something, sir? Feel free. I hesitated, then decided to take him at his word. Sending those kids to daycare at an amusement park, that seems, I don't know, kind of mean. I added hastily, although the wiggle waggle seems really good for little people, really fun. You have to understand something, son. At Joyland, we're in the black this much. He held a thumb and forefinger only a smidge apart. When parents know there's care for their wee ones, even for just a couple of hours, they bring the whole family. If they needed to hire a babysitter at home, they might not come at all, and our profit margin would disappear. I take your point, but I have a point too. Most of those little ones have never been to a place like this before. They'll remember it the way they remember their first movie, or their first day at school. Because of you, they won't remember crying because they were abandoned by their parents for a little while. They'll remember doing the hokey pokey with Howie the Happy Hound, who appeared like magic. I guess. He reached out, not for me, but for Howie. He stroked the fur with his gnarled fingers as he spoke. The Disney parks are scripted, and I hate that. Hate it. I think what they're doing down there in Orlando is fun pimping. I'm a seat-of-the-pants fan, and sometimes I see someone who's a seat-of-the-pants genius. That could be you. Too early to tell for sure, but yes, it could be you. He put his hands to the small of his back and stretched. I heard an alarmingly loud series of cracking noises. Might I share your cart back to the boneyard? I think I've had enough sun for one day. My cart is your cart. Since Joyland was his park, that was literally true. I think you'll wear the fur a lot this summer. Most of the young people see that as a burden or even a punishment. I don't believe that you will. Am I wrong? He wasn't. I've done a lot of jobs in the years since then, and my current editorial gig, probably my last gig before retirement seizes me in its claws, is terrific. But I never felt so weirdly happy, so absolutely in the right place as I did when I was 21, wearing the fur and doing the hokey pokey on a hot day in June. Seat of the pants, baby. I stayed friends with Tom and Aaron after that summer, and I'm friends with Aaron still. Although these days we're mostly email and Facebook buddies who sometimes get together for lunch in New York. I've never met her second husband. She says he's a nice guy, and I believe her. Why would I not? After being married to Mr. Original Nice Guy for 18 years and having that yardstick to measure by, she'd hardly pick a loser. In the spring of 1992, Tom was diagnosed with a brain tumor. He was dead 6 months later. When he called and told me he was sick, his usual ratchet jaw delivery slowed by the wrecking ball swinging back and forth in his head, I was stunned and depressed, the way almost anyone would be, I suppose, when he hears that a guy who should be in the very prime of his life is instead approaching the finish line. You want to ask how a thing like that can be fair. Weren't there supposed to be a few more good things for Tom? Like a couple of grandchildren, and maybe that long-dreamed-of vacation in Maui. During my time at Joyland, I once heard Pops Allen talk about burning the lot. In the talk, that means to blatantly cheat the rubes at what's supposed to be a straight game. I thought of that for the first time in years when Tom called with his bad news. But the mind defends itself as long as it can. After the first shock of such news dissipates, maybe you think, okay, it's bad, I get that, but it's not the final word. There still might be a chance. Even if 95% of the people who draw this particular card go down, there's still that lucky 5%. Also, doctors misdiagnose this shit all the time. Barring those things, there's the occasional miracle. You think that, and then you get the follow-up call. The woman who makes the follow-up call was once a beautiful young girl who ran around Joyland in a flippy green dress and a silly Sherwood Forest hat, toting a big old speed graphic camera, and the conies she braced hardly ever said no. How could they say no to that blazing red hair and eager smile? How could anyone say no to Aaron Cook? Well, God said no. God burned Tom Kennedy's lot, and he burned hers in the process. When I picked up the phone at 5:30 on a gorgeous October afternoon in Westchester, that girl had become a woman whose voice, blurry with tears, sounded old and tired to death. Tom died at 2 this afternoon. It was very peaceful. He couldn't talk, but he was aware. Dev, he squeezed my hand when I said goodbye. I said, I wish I could have been there. Yes. Her voice wavered, then firmed. Yes, that would have been good. You think, okay, I get it, I'm prepared for the worst. But you hold out that small hope, see, that's what fucks you up. That's what kills you. I talked to her. I told her how much I loved her and how much I had loved Tom. I told her, yes, I'd be at the funeral, and if there was anything I could do before then, she should call, day or night. Then I hung up the phone and lowered my head and bawled my goddamn eyes out. The end of my first love doesn't measure up to the death of one old friend and the bereavement of the other, but it followed the same pattern. Exactly the same. And if it seemed like the end of the world to me, first causing those suicidal ideations, silly and half-hearted though they may have been, and then a seismic shift in the previously unquestioned course of my life, you have to understand I had no scale by which to judge it. That's called being young. As June wore on, I started to understand that my relationship with Wendy was as sick as William Blake's rose, but I refused to believe it was mortally sick, even when the signs became increasingly clear. Letters, for instance. During my first week at Mrs. Shoplaw's, I wrote Wendy 4 long ones, even though I was run off my feet at Joyland and came drag-assing into my second-floor room each night with my head full of new information and new experiences, feeling like a kid dropped into a challenging college course, call it the advanced physics of fun, halfway through the semester. What I got in return was a single postcard with the Boston comment on the front and a very peculiar collaborative message on the back. At the top, written in a hand I didn't recognize, was this: Winnie writes the card while Rennie drives the bus. Below, in a hand I did recognize, Wendy, or Wenny if you like, I hated it myself, had written breezily, We as salesgirls off on a venture to Cape Cod. It's a party, hoopsie music. Don't worry, I held the wheel while Ren wrote her part. Hope you're good. W. Hoopsie music? Hope you're good. No love, no do you miss me, just hope you're good. And although, judging by the bumps and jags and ink blots, the card had been written while on the move in Renee's car, Wendy didn't have one. They both sounded either stoned or drunk on their asses. The following week, I sent 4 more letters, plus an errand photo of me wearing the fur. From Wendy, nothing in reply. You start to worry, then you start to get it, and then you know. Maybe you don't want to know. Maybe you think that lovers as well as doctors misdiagnose shit all the time, but in your heart, you know. Twice I tried calling her. The same grumpy girl answered both times. I imagined her wearing harlequin glasses, an ankle-length granny dress, and no lipstick. Not there, she said the first time. Out with Ren. Not there, not likely to be there in the future, grumpy girl said the second time. Moved. Moved where? I asked, alarmed. This was in the parlor of Maison Shoplaw, where there was a long-distance honor sheet beside the phone. My fingers were holding the big old-fashioned receiver so tightly they had gone numb. Wendy was going to college on a patchwork, magic carpet of scholarships, loans, and work-study employment the same as me. She couldn't afford a place on her own. Not without help, she couldn't. I don't know, and I don't care, grumpy girl said. I got tired of all the drinking and hen parties at 2 a.m. Some of us actually like to get a little sleep. Strange, but true. My heart was beating so hard I could feel it pulsing in my temples. Did Renee go with her? No, they had a fight over that guy, the one who helped Wendy move out, she said, Winnie, with a kind of bright contempt that made me sick to my stomach. Surely it wasn't the guy part that made me feel that way. I was her guy. If some friend, someone she had met at work, had pitched in and helped her move her stuff, what was that to me? Of course she could have guy friends. I had made at least one girlfriend, hadn't I? Is Renee there? Can I talk to her? No, she had a date. Some penny must have finally dropped because all at once Grumpy Girl got interested in the conversation. Hey, is your name Devin? I hung up. It wasn't something I planned, just something I did. I told myself I hadn't heard Grumpy Girl all of a sudden change into amused Grumpy Girl, as if there was some sort of joke going on and I was part of it. Maybe even the butt of it. As I believe I have said, the mind defends itself as long as it can. 3 days later, I got the only letter I received from Wendy Keegan that summer. The last letter. It was written on her stationery, which was deckle-edged and featured happy kittens playing with balls of yarn. It was the stationery of a 5th-grade girl, although that thought didn't occur to me until much later. There were 3 breathless pages, mostly saying how sorry she was, and how she had fought against the attraction, but it was just hopeless. And she knew that I would be hurt, so I probably shouldn't call her or try to see her for a while. And she hoped we could be good friends after the initial shock wore off. And he was a nice guy. He went to Dartmouth. He played lacrosse. She knew I'd like him. Maybe she could introduce him to me when the fall semester started. Etc., etc., fucking etc. That night, I plopped myself down on the sand 50 yards or so from Mrs. Shoplaw's beachside accommodations, planning to get drunk. At least, I thought it wouldn't be expensive. In those days, a 6-pack was all it took to get me pie-eyed. At some point, Tom and Aaron joined me. We watched the waves roll in together, the 3 Joyland musketeers. "What's wrong?" Aaron asked. I shrugged the way you do when it's small shit but annoying shit all the same. Girlfriend broke up with me. Sent me a Dear John letter. Which in your case, Tom said, would be a Dear Dev letter. Show a little compassion, Aaron told him. He's sad and hurt and trying not to show it. Are you too much of a dumbass to see that? No, Tom said. He put his arm around my shoulders and briefly hugged me against him. I'm sorry for your pain, pal. I felt it coming off you like a cold wind from Canada, or maybe even the Arctic. Can I have one of your beers? Sure. We sat there for quite a while, and under Aaron's gentle questioning, I spilled some of it, but not all of it. I was sad. I was hurt. But there was a lot more, and I didn't want them to see it. This was partly because I had been raised by my parents to believe barfing your feelings on other people was the height of impoliteness, but mostly because I was dismayed by the depth and strength of my jealousy. I didn't want them to even guess at that lively worm. He was from Dartmouth, oh God, yes. He'd probably pledged the best frat and drove a Mustang his folks gave him as a high school graduation present. Nor was jealousy the worst of it. The worst was the horrifying realization. That night it was just starting to sink in, that I had been really and truly rejected for the first time in my life. She was through with me, but I couldn't imagine being through with her. Aaron also took a beer and raised the can. Let's toast the next one to come along. I don't know who she'll be, Dev, only that meeting you will be her lucky day. Hear, hear, Tom said, raising his own can, and because he was Tom, he felt compelled to add, where, and there. I don't think either of them realized, then or all the rest of the summer, how fundamentally the ground under my feet had shifted, how lost I felt. I didn't want them to know. It was more than embarrassing. It seemed shameful. So I made myself smile, raised my own can of suds, and drank. At least with them to help me drink the 6, I didn't have to wake up the next morning hungover as well as heartbroken. That was good, because when we got to Joyland that morning, I found out from Pop Allen that I was down to wear the fur that afternoon on Joyland Avenue. 3 15-minute shifts at 3, 4, and 5. I bitched for form's sake. Everybody was supposed to bitch about wearing the fur. But I was glad. I liked being mobbed by the kids. And for the next few weeks, playing Howie also had a bitter sort of amusement value. As I made my tail wagging down Joyland Avenue, followed by crowds of laughing children, I thought it was no wonder Wendy had dumped me. Her new boyfriend went to Dartmouth and played lacrosse. Her old one was spending the summer in a third-tier amusement park, where he played a dog. Joyland summer. I ride jockeyed. I flashed the shies in the mornings, meaning I restocked them with prizes, and ran some of them in the afternoons. I untangled devil wagons by the dozen, learned how to fry dough without burning my fingers off, and worked on my pitch for the Carolina Spin. I danced and sang with the other greenies on the Wiggle Waggle Village story stage. Several times Fred Dean sent me to scratch the midway, a true sign of trust, because it meant picking up the noon or 5 p.m. take from the various concessions. I made run to Heaven's Bay or Wilmington when some piece of machinery broke down and stayed late on Wednesday nights, usually along with Tom, George Preston, and Ronnie Houston, to lube the whirly cups and a vicious neck-snapping ride called the Zipper. Both of those babies drank oil the way camels drink water when they get to the next oasis. And of course, I wore the fur. In spite of all this, I wasn't sleeping for shit. Sometimes I'd lie on my bed, clap my utterly taped-up headphones over my ears, and listen to my Doors records. I was particularly partial to some cheerful tunes such as Cars Hiss By My Window, Riders on the Storm, and of course, The End. When Jim Morrison's voice and Ray Manzarek's mystic chiming organ weren't enough to sedate me, I'd creep down the outside staircase and walk on the beach. Once or twice I slept on the beach. At least there were no bad dreams when I did manage to get under for a little while. I don't remember dreaming that summer at all. I could see bags under my eyes when I shaved in the morning, and sometimes I'd feel lightheaded after a particularly strenuous turn as Howie. Birthday parties in the overheated bedlam of Howdy House were the worst. But that was normal. Mr. Easterbrook had told me so. A little rest in the boneyard always put me right again. On the whole, I thought I was representing, as they say nowadays. I learned different on the first Monday in July, 2 days before the glorious 4th. My team, Beagle, reported to Pop Allen Shy first thing, as always, and he gave us our assignments as he laid out the pop guns. Usually, our early chores involved toting boxes of prizes, made in Taiwan, stamped on most of them, and flashing Shies until early gate, which was what we called opening. That morning, however, Pop told me Lane Hardy wanted me. This was a surprise. Lane rarely showed his face outside the boneyard until 20 minutes or so before early gate. I started that way, but Pop yelled at me. Nah, he's at the Simp Oyster. That was a derogatory term for the Ferris wheel. He would have known better than to use if Lane had actually been there. Beat feet, Jonesy. Got a lot to do today. I beat feet, but saw no one at the spin, which stood tall, still, and silent, waiting for the day's first customers. Over here, a woman called. I turned to my left and saw Rosie Gold standing outside her star-studded fortune-telling Shy, all kitted out in one of her gauzy Madame Fortuna rigs. On her head was an electric blue scarf, the knotted tail of which fell almost to the small of her back. Lane was standing beside her in his usual rig, faded straight-leg jeans, and a skin-tight, strappy T-shirt perfect for showing off his fully loaded guns. His derby was tilted at the proper wise guy angle. Looking at him, you'd believe he didn't have a brain in his head, but he had plenty. Both dressed for show, and both wearing bad news faces, I ran quickly through the last few days, trying to think of anything I had done that might account for those faces. It crossed my mind that Lane had orders to lay me off, or even fire me, but at the height of the summer? And wouldn't that be Fred Dean's or Brenda Rafferty's job? Also, why was Rosie here? Who died, guys? I asked. Just as long as it isn't you, Rosie said. She was getting into character for the day and sounded funny, half Brooklyn and half Carpathian Mountains. Huh? Walk with us, Jonesy, Lane said, and immediately started down the midway, which was largely deserted 90 minutes before early gate. No one was around but a few members of the janitorial staff, gazoonis in the talk and probably not a green card among them, sweeping up around the concessions, work that should have been done the night before. Rosie made room for me between them when I caught up. I felt like a crook being escorted to the pokey by a couple of cops. What's this about? You'll see, Rosie Fortuna said ominously, and pretty soon I did. Next to Horror House, the two connected actually, was Mysterio's Mirror Mansion. Next to the agent's booth was a regular mirror with a sign over it reading, "So you won't forget how you really look." Lane took me by one arm, Rosie by the other. Now I really did feel like a perp being brought in for a booking. They placed me in front of the mirror. What do you see? Lane asked. Me, I said. And then, because that didn't seem to be the answer they wanted, me needing a haircut? Look at your clothes, silly boy, Rosie said. I looked. Above my yellow work boots, I saw jeans with the recommended brand of rawhide gloves sticking out of the back pocket, and above my jeans was a blue chambray work shirt, faded but reasonably clean. On my head was an admirably battered Howie dog top, the finishing touch that meant so much. What about them? I said. I was starting to get a little mad. Kinda hanging on you, aren't they? Lane said. Didn't used to. How much weight you lost? Jesus, I don't know. Maybe we ought to go see Fat Wally. Fat while he ran the guess your weight joint. "It's not funny," Fortuna said. "You can't wear that damn dog costume half the day under the hot sun, then swallow 2 more salt pills and call it a meal. Mourn your lost love all you want, but eat while you do it. Eat, damn it!" "Who's been talking to you? Tom?" No, it wouldn't have been him. "Aaron? She had no business." "No one has been talking to me," Rosie said. She drew herself up impressively. "I have the sight." "I don't know about the sight, but you've got one hell of a nerve." All at once, she reverted to Rosie. "I'm not talking about psychic sight, kiddo. I'm talking about ordinary woman sight. You think I don't know a love-struck Romeo when I see one? After all the years I've been gigging palms and peeping the crystal, huh?" She stepped forward, her considerable breastworks leading the way. "I don't care about your love life. I just don't want to see you taken to the hospital on July 4th when it's supposed to hit 95 in the shade, by the way, with heat prostration or something worse." Lane took off his derby, peered into it, and reset it on his head, cocked the other way. "What she won't come right out and say because she has to protect her famous crusty reputation is, we all like you, kid. You learn fast. You do what's asked of you. You're honest, you don't make no trouble, and the kids love you like mad when you're wearing the fur. But you'd have to be blind not to see something's wrong with you. Rosie thinks girl trouble. Maybe she's right. Maybe she ain't." Rosie gave him a haughty dare-you-doubt-me stare. "Maybe your parents are getting a divorce. Mine did, and it damn near killed me. Maybe your big brother got arrested for selling dope." "My mother's dead, and I'm an only child," I said sulkily. "I don't care what you are in the straight world," he said. "This is Joyland, the show, and you're one of us, which means we got a right to care about you whether you like it or not. So get something to eat." "Get a lot to eat," Rosie said. "Now, noon, all day, every day, and try to eat something besides fried chicken where, I tell you what, there's a heart attack in every drumstick. Go in Rock Lobster and tell them you want to take out a fish and salad. Tell them to make it a double. Get your weight up so you don't look like a human skeleton in a 10-in-1. She turned her gaze on Lane. "It's a girl, of course it is. Anybody can see that." "Whatever it is, stop fucking pining," Lane said. "Such language to use around a lady," Rosie said. She was sounding like Fortuna again. Soon she'd come out with, "This is what the spirits want," or something equivalent. "I'll blow it out," Lane said, and walked back toward the spin. When he was gone, I looked at Rosie. She really wasn't much in the mother figure department, but right then, she was what I had. "Roz, does everyone know?" She shook her head. "Nah, to most of the old guys, you're just another greenie jack of all trades, although not as green as you were 3 weeks ago. But many people here like you, and they see something is wrong. Your friend Aaron, for one. Your friend Tom, for another." She said friend like it rhymed with rent. "I am another friend, and as a friend, I tell you that you can't fix your heart. Only time can do that. But you can fix your body. Eat." "You sound like a Jewish mother joke," I said. "I am a Jewish mother, and believe me, it's no joke." "I'm the joke," I said. "I think about her all the time." "That you can't help, at least for now. But you must turn your back on the other thoughts that sometimes come to you." I think my mouth dropped open. I'm not sure. I know I stared. People who've been in the business as long as Rosie Gold had been back then, they're called mits in the talk, for their palmistry skills. Have their ways of picking your brains so that what they say sounds like the result of telepathy, but usually it's just close observation. Not always, though. I don't understand. Give those morbid records a rest. Do you understand that? She looked grimly into my face, and then laughed at the surprise she saw there. Rosie Gold may be just a Jewish mother and a grandmother, but Madame Fortuna sees much. So did my landlady, and I found out later, after seeing Rosie and Mrs. Shoplow having lunch together in Heaven's Bay on one of Madame Fortuna's rare days off, that they were close friends who had known each other for years. Mrs. Shoplow dusted my room and vacuumed the floor once a week. She would have seen my records. As for the rest, those famous suicidal ideations that sometimes came to me, might not a woman who had spent most of her life observing human nature and watching for psychological clues, called tells both in the talk and big league poker, Guess that a sensitive young man, freshly dumped, might entertain thoughts of pills and ropes and riptide undertows? I'll eat, I promised. I had 1,000 things to do before early gate, but mostly I was just anxious to be away from her before she said something totally outrageous like, "Her name is Vendi, and you still think of her when you masturbate. Also, drink big glass of milk before you go to bed." She raised an admonitory finger. "No coffee. Milk will help you sleep." "Worth a try," I said. She went back to Roz again. "The day we met, you asked if I saw a beautiful woman with dark hair in your future. Do you remember that?" "Yes." "What did I say?" "That she was in my past." Rosie gave a single nod, hard and imperious. "So she is, and when you want to call her and beg for a second chance, you will show a little spine. Have a little self-respect. Also remember that the long distance is expensive." Tell me something I don't know, I thought. "Listen, I really have to get going, Roz. Lots to do." "Yes, a busy day for all of us. But before you go, Jonesy, have you met the boy yet? The one with the dog? Or the girl who wears the red hat and carries the doll? I told you about them, too, when we met." "Roz, I've met a billion kids in the last—" "You haven't, then, okay? You will." She stuck out her lower lip and blew, stirring the fringe of hair that stuck out from beneath her scarf. Then she seized my wrist. "I see danger for you, Jonesy. Sorrow and danger." I thought for a moment she was going to whisper something like, "Beware the dark stranger, he rides a unicycle." Instead, she let go of me and pointed at Horror House. "Which team turns that unpleasant hole? Not yours, is it?" "No, Team Doberman." The Dobies were also responsible for the adjacent attractions, Mysterio's Mirror Mansion and the Wax Museum. Taken together, these three were Joyland's half-hearted nod to the old Carney spook shows. "Good, stay out of it. It's haunted, and a boy with bad thoughts needs to be visiting a haunted house like he needs arsenic in his mouthwash. Capiche?" "Yeah." I looked at my watch. She got the point and stepped back. "Watch for those kids, and watch your step, boy chick. There's a shadow over you." Lane and Rosie gave me a pretty good jolt, I'll admit it. I didn't stop listening to my Doors records, not immediately at least, but I made myself eat more and started sucking down 3 milkshakes a day. I could feel fresh energy pouring into my body as if someone had turned on a tap, and I was very grateful for that on the afternoon of July 4th. Joyland was tipsed, and I was down to wear the fur 10 times, an all-time record. Fred Dean himself came down to give me the schedule and to hand me a note from old Mr. Easterbrook. "If it becomes too much, stop at once and tell your team leader to find a sub." "I'll be fine," I said. "Maybe, but make sure Pop sees this memo." "Okay." "Brad likes you, Jonesy. That's rare. He hardly ever notices the greenies unless he sees one of them screw up." I liked him too, but didn't say so to Fred. I thought it would have sounded suck-assy. All my July 4th shifts were 10ers. Not bad, even though most 10-minute shifts actually turned out to be 15s. But the heat was crushing. 95 in the shade, Rosie had said. But by noon that day, it was 102 by the thermometer that hung outside the park ops trailer. Luckily for me, Dottie Lassen had repaired the other XL Howie suit, and I could swap between the two. While I was wearing one, Dottie would have the other turned as inside out as it could go and hung in front of 3 fans, drying the sweat-soaked interior. At least I could remove the fur by myself. By then, I'd discovered the secret. Howie's right paw was actually a glove, and when you knew the trick, pulling down the zipper to the neck of the costume was a cinch. Once you had the head off, the rest was cake. This was good because I could change by myself behind a pull curtain. No more displaying my sweaty, semi-transparent undershorts to the costume ladies. As the bunting-draped afternoon of July 4th wore on, I was excused from all other duties. I'd do my capering, then retreat to Joyland Under and collapse on the ratty old couch in the boneyard for a while, soaking up the air conditioning. When I felt revived, I'd use the alleys to get to the costume shop and swap one fur for the other. Between shifts, I guzzled pints of water and quarts of unsweetened iced tea. You won't believe I was having fun, but I was. Even the brats were loving me that day. So, 4:45 in the afternoon, I'm driving down Joyland Avenue, our midway, while the overhead speakers blast out Daddy Dewdrop's Chickaboom, don't you just love it. I'm giving out hugs to the kiddies and awesome August coupons to the adults, because Joyland's business always dropped off as summer wound down. I'm posing for pictures, some taken by Hollywood girls, most by hordes of sweat-soaked, sunburned parent paparazzi, and trailing adoring kids after me in cometary splendor. I'm also looking for the nearest door to Joyland Under, because I'm pretty well done up. I have just one more turn as Howie scheduled today, because Howie the Happy Hound never shows his blue eyes and cocked ears after sundown. I don't know why. It's just a show tradition. Did I notice the little girl in the red hat before she fell down on the baking pavement of Joyland Avenue, writhing and jerking? I think so, but can't say for sure, because passing time adds false memories and modifies real ones. I surely wouldn't have noticed the pupilicious she was waving around, or her bright red Howie dog top. A kid in an amusement park with a hot dog is hardly a unique sighting, and we must have sold 1,000 red Howie hats that day. If I did notice her, it was because of the doll she had held curled to her chest in the hand not holding her mustard-smeared pup. It was a big old Raggedy Ann. Madame Fortuna had suggested I be on the lookout for a little girl with a doll only 2 days before, so maybe I did notice her. Or maybe I was only thinking of getting off the midway before I fell down in a faint. Anyway, her doll wasn't the problem. The pupilicious she was eating, that was the problem. I only think I remember her running toward me. Hey, they all did. But I know what happened next, and why it happened. She had a bite of her pup in her mouth, and when she drew in her breath to scream, "Howie!" she pulled it down her throat. Hot dogs, the perfect choking food. Luckily for her, just enough of Rosie Gold's Fortuna bullshit had stuck in my head for me to act quickly. When the little girl's knees buckled, her expression of happy ecstasy turning first to surprise and then terror, I was already reaching behind me and grabbing the zipper with my paw glove. The Howie head tumbled off and lolled to the side, revealing the red face and sweat-soaked clumpy hair of Mr. Devin Jones. The little girl dropped her Raggedy Ann. Her hat fell off. She began clawing at her neck. "Haley," a woman cried. "Haley, what's wrong?" Here's more luck in action. I not only knew what was wrong, I knew what to do. I'm not sure you'll understand how fortunate that was. This is 1973 we're talking about, remember? And Henry Heimlich would not publish the essay that would give the Heimlich maneuver its name for another full year. Still, it's always been the most common-sense way to deal with choking, and we had learned it during our first and only orientation session before beginning work at UNH Commons. The teacher was a tough old veteran of the restaurant wars who had lost his Nashua coffee shop a year after the new McDonald's went up nearby. "Just remember, it won't work if you don't do it hard," he told us. "Don't worry about breaking a rib if you see someone dying in front of you." I saw the little girl's face turning purple and didn't even think about her ribs. I seized her in a vast furry embrace with my tail-pulling left paw jammed against the bony arch in her midsection where her ribs came together. I gave a single hard squeeze, and a yellow-smeared chunk of hot dog almost 2 inches long came popping out of her mouth like a cork from a champagne bottle. It flew nearly 4 feet, and no, I didn't break any of her ribs. Kids are flexible. God bless them. I wasn't aware that I and Haley Stansfield, that was her name, were hemmed in by a growing circle of adults. I certainly wasn't aware that we were being photographed dozens of times, including the shot by Aaron Cook that wound up in the Heavens Bay Weekly and several bigger papers, including the Wilmington Star-News. I've still got a framed copy of that photo in an attic box somewhere. It shows the little girl dangling in the arms of this weird man-dog hybrid with one of its 2 heads lolling on its shoulder. The girl is holding out her arms to her mother, perfectly caught by Aaron's speed graphic just as Mom collapses to her knees in front of us. All of that is a blur to me, but I remember the mother sweeping the little girl up into her own arms and the father saying, "Kid, I think you saved her life." And I remember this as clear as crystal, the girl looking at me with her big blue eyes and saying, "Oh, poor Howie, your head fell off." The all-time classic newspaper headline, as everyone knows, is "Man Bites Dog." The Star-News couldn't equal that, but the one over Aaron's picture gave it a run for its money. Dog saves girl at amusement park. Want to know my first snarky urge? To clip the article and send it to Wendy Keegan. I might have even done it had I not looked so much like a drowned muskrat in Aaron's photo. I did send it to my father, who called to say how proud of me he was. I could tell by the tremble in his voice that he was close to tears. "God put you in the right place at the right time, Dev," he said. "Maybe God. Maybe Rosie Gold, a.k.a. Madame Fortuna. Maybe a little of both." The next day I was summoned to Mr. Easterbrook's office, a pine-paneled room raucous with old Carney posters and photographs. I was particularly taken by a photo that showed a straw-hatted agent with a dapper mustache standing next to a test-your-strength shy. The sleeves of his white shirt were rolled up, and he was leaning on a sledgehammer like it was a cane. A total dude. At the top of the ding post next to the bell was a sign reading, "Kiss him, lady. He's a he-man." "Is that guy you?" I asked. "It is indeed, although I only ran the ding show for a season. It wasn't to my taste. Gaff jobs never have been. I like my games straight. Sit down, Jonesy. You want a Coke or something?" "No, sir, I'm fine." I was, in fact, sloshing with that morning's milkshake. "I'll be perfectly blunt. You gave this show $20,000 worth of good publicity yesterday afternoon, and I still can't afford to give you a bonus. If you knew... But never mind." He leaned forward. "What I can do is owe you a favor. If you need one, ask. I'll grant it if it's in my power. Will that do?" "Sure." "Good. And will you be willing to make one more appearance as Howie with the little girl? Her parents want to thank you in private, but a public appearance would be an excellent thing for Joyland. Entirely your call, of course." "When?" "Saturday. After the noon parade, we'd put up a platform at the intersection of Joyland and Hound Dog Way. Invite the press." "Happy to," I said. I liked the idea of being in the newspapers again, I will admit. It had been a tough summer on my ego and self-image, and I'd take all the turnaround I could get. He rose to his feet in his glassy, unsure way and offered me his hand. "Thank you again, on behalf of that little girl, but also on behalf of Joyland. The accountants who run my damn life will be very happy about this." When I stepped out of the office building, which was located with the other administrative buildings in what we called the backyard, my entire team was there. Even Pop Allen had come. Erin, dressed for success in Hollywood girl green, stepped forward with the shiny metal crown of laurels made from Campbell's soup cans. She dropped to one knee. "For you, my hero." I would have guessed I was too sunburned to flush, but that turned out not to be true. "Oh, Jesus, get up." "Savior of the little girls," Tom Kennedy said. "Not to mention savior of our place of employment getting its ass sued off and possibly having to shut its doors." Erin bounced to her feet, stuck the ludicrous soup can crown on my head, then gave me a big old smackaroonie. Everyone on Team Beagle cheered. "Okay," Pop said when it died down. "We can all agree that you're a knight in shining armor, Jonesy. You're also not the first guy to save a rube from popping off on the midway. Can we all get back to work?" I was good with that. Being famous was fun, but the don't-get-a-swelled-head message of the tin laurels wasn't lost on me. I was wearing the fur that Saturday on the makeshift platform at the center of our midway. I was happy to take Haley in my arms, and she was clearly happy to be there. I'd guess there were roughly 9 miles of film burned as she proclaimed her love for her favorite doggie and kissed him, again and again, for the cameras. Erin was in the front row with her camera for a while, but the news photogs were bigger and all male. Soon they shunted her away to a less favorable position. And what did they all want? What Erin had already gotten, a picture of me with my Howie head off. That was the one thing I wouldn't do, although I'm sure none of Fred, Lane, or Mr. Easterbrook himself would have penalized me for it. I wouldn't do it because it would have flown in the face of park tradition. Howie never took off the fur in public. To do so would have been like outing the tooth fairy. I'd done it while Haley Stansfield was choking, but that was a necessary exception. I would not deliberately break the rule. So I guess I was Carney after all, although not Carney from Carney, never that. Later, dressed in my own duds again, I met with Haley and her parents in the Joyland Customer Service Center. Close up, I could see that Mom was pregnant with number 2, although she probably had 3 or 4 months of eating pickles and ice cream still ahead of her. She hugged me and wept some more. Haley didn't seem overly concerned. She sat in one of the plastic chairs swinging her feet and looking at old copies of Screen Time, speaking the names of the various celebrities in the declamatory voice of a court page announcing visiting royalty. I patted Mom's back and said, there. Dad didn't cry, but the tears were standing in his eyes as he approached me and held out a check in the amount of $500 made out to me. When I asked what he did for a living, he said he had started his own contracting firm the year before. Just now little, but getting on her feet pretty good, he told me. I considered that, factored in one kid here, plus another on the way, and tore up the check. I told him I couldn't take money for something that was just part of the job. You have to remember, I was only 21. There were no weekends, per se, for Joyland summer help. We got a day and a half every 9, which meant they were never the same days. There was a sign-up sheet, so Tom, Aaron, and I almost always managed to get the same downtime. That was why we were together on a Wednesday night in early August, sitting around a campfire on the beach and having the sort of meal that can only nourish the very young. Beer, burgers, barbecue-flavored potato chips, and coleslaw. For dessert, we had s'mores that Erin cooked over the fire, using a grill she borrowed from Pirate Pete's ice cream waffle joint. It worked pretty well. We could see other fires, great leaping bonfires as well as cooking fires all the way down the beach to the twinkling metropolis of Joyland. They made a lovely chain of burning jewelry. Such fires are probably illegal in the 21st century. The powers that be have a way of outlawing many beautiful things made by ordinary people. I don't know why that should be. I only know it is. While we ate, I told them about Madame Fortuna's prediction that I would meet a boy with a dog and a little girl in a red hat who carried a doll. I finished by saying, 1 down and 1 to go. Wow, Aaron said. Maybe she really is psychic. A lot of people have told me that, but I didn't really. Like who? Tom demanded. Well, Dottie Lassen in the costume shop for one. Tina Ackerley for another. You know the librarian Dev creeps down the hall to visit at night? I flipped her the bird. She giggled. 2 is not a lot, Tom said, speaking in his hot shit professor voice. Lane Hardy makes 3, I said. He says she's told people stuff that rocked them back on their heels. In the interest of total disclosure, I felt compelled to add. Of course, he also said that 90% of her predictions are total crap. Probably closer to 95, said the hot shit professor. Fortune-telling's a con game, boys and girls, and Ike Hyman in the talk. Take that hat thing. Joyland dog tops only come in 3 colors, red, blue, and yellow. Red's by far the most popular. As for the doll, come on. How many little kids bring some sort of toy to the amusement park? It's a strange place, and a favorite toy is a comfort thing. If she hadn't choked on her hot dog right in front of you, if she had given Howie a big old hug and passed on, you would have seen some other little girl wearing a red dog top and carrying a doll and said, Aha! Madame Fortuna really can see the future. I must cross her palm with silver so she will tell me more. You're such a cynic, Aaron said, giving him an elbow. Rosie Gold would never try taking money from someone in the show. She didn't ask for money, I said, but I thought what Tom said made a lot of sense. It was true she had known, or seemed to know, that my dark-haired girl was in my past, not my future. But that could have been no more than a guess based on percentages, or the look on my face when I asked. Course not, Tom said, helping himself to another s'more. She was just practicing on you, staying sharp. I bet she's told a lot of other greenie stuff, too. Would you be one of them, I asked. Well, no, but that means nothing. I looked at Erin, who shook her head. She also thinks Horror House is haunted, I said. I've heard that one, too, Erin said, by a girl who got murdered in there. Bullshit, Tom cried. Next you'll be telling me it was the Hook and he still lurks behind the screaming skull. There really was a murder, I said. A girl named Linda Gray. She was from Florence, South Carolina. There are pictures of her and the guy who killed her at the shooting gallery and standing in line at the spin. No Hook, but there was a tattoo of a bird on his hand. A hawk or an eagle. That silenced him, at least for the time being. Lane Hardy said that Roz only thinks Horror House is haunted because she won't go inside and find out for sure. She won't even go near it if she can help it. Lane thinks that's ironic because he says it really is haunted. Erin made her eyes big and round and scooted a little closer to the fire, partly for effect. Mostly, I think, so that Tom would put his arm around her. He's seen? I don't know. He said to ask Mrs. Shoplaw, and she gave me the whole story. I ran it down for them. It was a good story to tell at night, under the stars, with the surf rolling and a beach fire starting to burn down the coals. Even Tom seemed fascinated. Does she claim to have seen Linda Gray? he asked when I finally ran down. Le Chapelaw? I mentally replayed her story as told to me the day I rented the room on the second floor. I don't think so. She would have said. He nodded, satisfied. A perfect lesson in how things work. Everyone knows someone who's seen a UFO, and everyone knows someone who's seen a ghost. Hearsay evidence, inadmissible in court. Me, I'm a doubting Thomas. Get it? Tom Kennedy, doubting Thomas? Erin threw him a much sharper elbow. We get it. She looked thoughtfully into the fire. You know what? Summer's 2/3 gone, and I've never been in Joyland Screamshy a single time, not even the baby part up front. It's a no-photo zone. Brenda Rafferty told us it's because a lot of couples go in there to make out. She peered at me. What are you grinning about? Nothing. I was thinking of Le Chapelaw's late husband going through the place after Lategate and picking up cast-off panties. Have either of you guys been in? We both shook our heads. HH's Dobie team's job, Tom said. Let's do it tomorrow. All three of us in one car. Maybe we'll see her. Go to Joyland on our day off and we could spend it on the beach, Tom asked. That's masochism at its very finest. This time, in spite of giving him an elbow, she poked him in the ribs. I didn't know if they were sleeping together yet, but it seemed likely. The relationship had certainly become very physical. Poop on that. As employees, we get in free. And what does a ride take, 5 minutes? I think a little longer, I said. 9 or 10 plus some time in the baby part, say 15 minutes all told. Tom put his chin on her head and looked at me through the fine cloud of her hair. Poop on that, she says. You can tell that here's a young woman with a fine college education. Before she started hanging out with sorority girls, she would have said shitsky and left it at that. The day I start hanging out with a bunch of half-starved, mix-and-match sluts will be the day I crawl up my own ass and die. For some reason, this vulgarity pleased me to no end. Possibly because Wendy was a veteran mix-and-matcher. You, Thomas Patrick Kennedy, are just afraid we will see her, and you'll have to take back all those things you said about Madame Fortuna, and ghosts, and UFOs, and... Tom raised his hands. I give up. We'll get in line with the rest of the rubes, the conies, I mean, and take the horror house tour. I only insist it be in the afternoon. I need my beauty rest. You certainly do, I said. Coming from someone who looks like you, that's pretty funny. Give me a beer, Jonesy. I gave him a beer. Tell us how it went with the Stansfields, Erin said. Did they blubber all over you and call you their hero? That was pretty close, but I didn't want to say so. The parents were pretty cool. The kid sat in the corner reading Screen Time and saying she spied Dean Martin with her little eye. Forget the local color and cut to the chase, Tom said. Did you get any money out of it? I was preoccupied with thoughts of how the little girl announcing the celebrities with such reverence could have been in a flatline coma instead, or in a casket. Thus distracted, I answered honestly. The guy offered me $500, but I wouldn't take it. Tom goggled. Say what? I looked down at the remains of the s'more I was holding. Marshmallow was drooling onto my fingers, so I tossed it into the fire. I was full anyway. I was also embarrassed and pissed off to be feeling that way. The man's trying to get a little business up and running, and based on the way he talked about it, it's at the point where it could go either way. He's also got a wife and a kid and another kid coming soon. I didn't think he could afford to be giving money away. He couldn't? What about you? I blinked. What about me? To this day, I don't know if Tom was genuinely angry or faking it. I think he might have started out faking and then gathered steam as full understanding of what I'd done struck him. I have no idea exactly what his home situation was, but I knew he was living from paycheck to paycheck and had no car. When he wanted to take Erin out, he borrowed mine and was careful, punctilious, I should say, about paying for the gas he used. Money mattered to him. I never got the sense it completely owned him, but yes, it mattered to him a great deal. You're going to school on a wing and a prayer, same as Erin and me, and working at Joyland isn't going to land any of us in a limousine. What's wrong with you? Did your mother drop you on your head when you were a baby? Take it easy, Erin said. He paid no attention. Do you want to spend the fall semester next year getting up early so you can pull dirty breakfast dishes off a Commons conveyor belt? You must, because $500 a semester is about what it pays at Rutgers. I know, because I checked before lucking into a tutoring gig. You know how I made it through freshman year? Writing papers for rich frat boys majoring in advanced beerology. If I had been caught, I could have been suspended for a semester or tossed completely. I'll tell you what your grand gesture amounted to, giving away 20 hours a week you could have spent studying. He heard himself ranting, stopped, and raised a grin. Or chatting up with some females. "I'll give you Lissum," Aaron said, and pounced on him. They went rolling across the sand, Aaron tickling and Tom yelling, with a notable lack of conviction, for her to get off. That was fine with me, because I did not care to pursue the issues Tom had raised. I had already made up my mind about some things, it seemed, and all that remained was for my conscious mind to get the news. The next day at 3:15, we were in line at Horror House. A kid named Brady Waterman was agenting the shy. I remember him because he was also good at playing Howie, but not as good as I was, I feel compelled to add, strictly in the cause of honesty. Although quite stout at the beginning of the summer, Brady was now slim and trim. As a diet program, wearing the fur had Weight Watchers beat 6 ways to Tulsa. "What are you guys doing here?" he asked. "Isn't it your day off?" "We had to see Joyland's one and only dark ride," Tom said, "and I'm already feeling a satisfying sense of dramatic unity, Brady Waterman and Horror House. It's the perfect match." He scowled. "Y'all are going to try to cram into one car, aren't you?" "We have to," Aaron told him. Then she leaned close to one of Brad's juggy ears and whispered, "It's a truth or dare thing." As Brad considered this, he touched the tip of his tongue to the middle of his upper lip. I could see him calculating the possibilities. The guy behind us spoke up. "Kids, could you move the line along? I understand there's air conditioning inside and I could use some." "Go on," Brad told us. "Put an egg in your shoe and beat it." Coming from Brad, this was Rabelasian wit. "Any ghosts in there?" I asked. "Hundreds, and I hope they all fly right up your ass." We started with Mysterio's Mirror Mansion, pausing briefly to regard ourselves drawn tall or smashed squat. With that minor giggle accomplished, we followed the tiny red dots on the bottom of certain mirrors. These led us directly to the Wax Museum. Given the secret road map, we arrived well ahead of the rest of the current group, who wandered around laughing and bumping into the various angled panes of glass. To Tom's disappointment, there were no murderers in the Wax Museum, only pals and celebs. A smiling John F. Kennedy and a jumpsuited Elvis Presley flanked the doorway. Ignoring the "Please do not touch" sign, Aaron gave Elvis's guitar a strum. "Out of two," she began, then recoiled as Elvis jerked to life and began singing "Can't Help Falling in Love with You." "Gotcha," Tom said gleefully and gave her a hug. Beyond the Wax Museum was a doorway leading to the barrel and bridge room, which rumbled with machinery that sounded dangerous, it wasn't, and studded with strobe lights of conflicting colors. Aaron crossed to the other side of the shaking, tilting Billy Goat's bridge while the macho men accompanying her dared the barrel. I stumbled my way through, reeling like a drunk but only falling once. Tom stopped in the middle, stuck out his hands and feet so he looked like a paper doll and made a complete 360 that way. "Stop it, you goof, you'll break your neck," Aaron called. "He won't even if he falls," I said. "It's padded." Tom rejoined us, grinning and flushed to the roots of his hair. "That woke up brain cells that have been asleep since I was 3. "Yeah, but what about all the ones it killed?" Aaron asked. Next came the tilted room, and beyond that was an arcade filled with teenagers playing pinball and skee-ball. Aaron watched the skee-ball for a while with her arms folded beneath her breast and a disapproving look on her face. "Don't they know that's a complete butcher's game?" "People come here to be butched," I said. "It's part of the attraction." Aaron sighed. And I thought Tom was a cynic. On the far side of the arcade, beneath a glowing green skull, was a sign reading, "Horror House lies beyond. Beware. Pregnant women and those with small children may exit left." We walked into an antechamber filled with echoing recorded cackles and screams. Pulsing red light illuminated a single steel track and a black tunnel entrance beyond. From deep within it came rumbles, flashing lights, and more screams. These were not recorded. From a distance, they didn't sound particularly happy, but probably they were. Some, at least. Eddie Parks, proprietor of Horror House and boss of Team Doberman, walked over to us. He was wearing rawhide gloves and a dog top so old it was faded to no color at all, although it turned blood red each time the lights pulsed. He gave us a dismissive sniff. "Must have been a damn boring day off." "Just wanted to see how the other half lives," Tom said. Aaron gave Eddie her most radiant smile. It was not returned. "3 to a car, I guess? That what you want?" "Yes," I said. "Fine with me. Just remember the rules apply to you, same as anyone else. Keep your fucking hands inside." "Yes, sir," Tom said and gave a little salute. Eddie looked at him the way a man might look at a new species of bug and walked back to his controls, which consisted of 3 shifter knobs sticking out of a waist-high podium. There were also a few buttons illuminated by a tensor lamp, bent low to minimize its less than ghostly white light. "Charming guy," Tom muttered. Aaron hooked an arm into Tom's right elbow and my left, drawing us close. "Does anyone like him?" she murmured. "No," Tom said. "Not even his own team. He's already fired 2 of them." The rest of our group started to catch up just as a train filled with laughing conies, plus a few crying kids whose parents probably should have heeded the warning and exited from the arcade, arrived. Aaron asked one of the girls if it was scary. "The scary part was trying to keep his hands where they belong," she said, then squealed happily as her boyfriend first kissed her neck and then pulled her toward the arcade. We climbed aboard. 3 of us in a car designed for 2, made for an extremely tight fit, and I was very aware of Erin's thigh pressing against mine, and the brush of her breast against my arm. I felt a sudden and far from unpleasant southward tingle. I would argue that, fantasies aside, the majority of men are monogamous from the chin up. Below the belt buckle, however, there's a wahoo stampeder who just doesn't give a shit. "Hands inside the car!" Eddie Parks was yelling in a bored-to-death monotone that was the complete antithesis of a cheerful Lane Hardy pitch. "Hands inside the car! You got a kid under 3 feet, put him in your lap, or get out of the car. Hold still and watch for the bar." The safety bars came down with a clank, and a few girls tuned up with preparatory screams, clearing their vocal cords for the dark ride arias to come, you might say. There was a jerk, and we rode into Horror House. 9 minutes later, we got out and exited through the arcade with the rest of the tip. Behind us, we could hear Eddie exhorting his next bunch to keep their hands inside the car and watch for the bar. He never gave us a look. "The dungeon part wasn't scary because all the prisoners were dobies," Aaron said. "The one in the pirate outfit was Billy Ruggiero. Her color was high, her hair was mussed from the blowers, and I thought she never looked so pretty. But the screaming skull really got me, and the torture chamber? My God!" "Pretty gross," I agreed. I'd seen a lot of horror movies during my high school years, and thought of myself as inured, but seeing an eye-bulging head come rolling down an inclined trowel from the guillotine had jumped the shit out of me. I mean, the mouth was still moving. Out on Joyland Avenue again, we spotted Cam Jorgensen from Team Foxhound selling lemonade. "Who wants one?" Aaron asked. She was still bubbling over. "I'm buying." "Sure," I said. "Tom?" He shrugged his assent. Aaron gave him a quizzical look, then ran to get the drinks. I glanced at Tom, but he was watching the rocket go around and around, or maybe looking through it. Aaron came back with 3 tall paper cups, half a lemon bobbing on top of each. We took them to the benches in Joyland Park, just down from the Wiggle Waggle, and sat in the shade. Aaron was talking about the bats at the end of the ride, how she knew they were just wind-up toys on wires, but bats had always scared the hell out of her, and there she broke off. "Tom, are you okay? You haven't said a word. Not sick to your stomach from turning in the barrel, are you?" "My stomach's fine." He took a sip of his lemonade as if to prove it. "What was she wearing, Dev? Do you know?" "Huh?" "The girl who got murdered. Lori Gray. Linda Gray. Lori, Larkin, Linda, whatever. What was she wearing? Was it a full skirt, a long one down to her shins, and a sleeveless blouse?" I looked at him closely. We both did. Initially thinking it was just another Tom Kennedy goof. Only he didn't look like he was goofing. Now that I really examined him, what he looked like was scared half to death. "Tom?" Aaron touched his shoulder. "Did you see her?" "Don't joke now." He put his hand over hers but didn't look at her. He was looking at me. "Yeah," he said. "Long skirt and sleeveless blouse. You know because Le Chapelain told you." "What color?" I asked. "Hard to tell with the lights changing all the time, but I think blue. Blouse and skirt both." Then Aaron got it. "Holy shit," she said in kind of a sigh. The high color was leaving her cheeks in a hurry. There was something else, something the police had held back for a long time, according to Mrs. Chapelain. "What about her hair, Tom? Ponytail, right?" He shook his head, took a small sip of lemonade, patted his mouth with the back of his hand. His hair hadn't gone gray. He wasn't all starry-eyed, his hands weren't shaking, but he still didn't look like the same guy who joked his way through Mirror Mansion and the barrel and bridge room. He looked like a guy who'd just gotten a reality enema, one that had flushed all the junior year summer job bullshit out of his system. Not a ponytail. Her hair long, all right, but she had a thing across the top of her head to keep it out of her face. I've seen a billion of them, but I can't remember what girls call it. An Alice band? Aaron said. Yeah, I think that was blue too. She was holding out her hands. He held his out in the exact same way Emelina Shoplaw had held hers out the day she told me the story. Like she was asking for help. You already know this stuff from Mrs. Shoplaw, I said. Isn't that right? Tell us, we won't be mad, will we, Aaron? No, But Tom shook his head. I'm just telling you what I saw. Neither of you saw her? We had not, and said so. Why me? Tom asked plaintively. Once we were inside, I wasn't even thinking of her. I was just having fun. So, why me? Aaron tried to get more details while I drove us back to Heaven's Bay in my Heap. Tom answered the first 2 or 3 of her questions, then said he didn't want to talk about it anymore in an abrupt tone that I had never heard him use with Aaron before. I don't think she had either, because she was quiet as a mouse for the rest of the ride. Maybe they talked about it some more between themselves, but I can tell you that he never spoke of it again to me until about a month before he died. And then, only briefly. It was near the end of a phone conversation that had been painful because of his halting nasal voice and the way he sometimes got confused. At least, I know. There's something, he said. I saw for myself. That summer, in the hasty hut. I didn't bother to correct him. I knew what he meant. Do you remember? I remember, I said. But I don't know. There's something. If it's good or bad. His dying voice filled with horror. The way Dev, the way she held out her hands. Yes, the way she held out her hands. The next time I had a full day off, it was nearly the middle of August, and the tide of conies was ebbing. I no longer had to jink and juke my way up Joyland Avenue to the Carolina Spin and to Madame Fortuna's Shy, which stood in its revolving shadow. Lane and Fortuna, she was all Fortuna today, in full gypsy kit, were talking together by the Spin's control station. Lane saw me and tipped his derby widdershins, which was his way of acknowledging me. Look what the cat drug in, he said. How you be, Jonesy? Fine, I said, although this wasn't strictly true. The sleepless nights had come back now that I was only wearing the fur 4 or 5 times a day. I lay in my bed waiting for the small hours to get bigger, window open so I could hear the incoming surf, thinking about Wendy and her new boyfriend. Also, thinking about the girl Tom had seen standing beside the tracks in Horror House, in the fake brick tunnel between the dungeon and the chamber of torture. I turned to Fortuna. Can I talk to you? She didn't ask why. Just led me to her Shy, swept aside the purple curtain that hung in the doorway, and ushered me in. There was a round table covered with a rose-pink cloth. On it was Fortuna's crystal, now draped. 2 simple folding chairs were positioned so that the seer and supplicant faced each other over the crystal, which I happen to know was underlit by a small bulb Madame Fortuna could operate with her foot. On the back wall was a giant silk-screened hand, fingers spread and palm out. On it, neatly labeled, were the 7. Lifeline, Heartline, Headline, Loveline, also known as the Girdle of Venus, Sunline, Fateline, Healthline. Madame Fortuna gathered her skirts and seated herself. She motioned for me to do the same. She did not undrape her crystal, nor did she invite me to cross her palm with silver so that I might know the future. Ask what you came to ask, she said. I want to know if the little girl was just an informed guess or if you really knew something, saw something. She looked at me long and steadily. In Madame Fortuna's place of business, there was a faint smell of incense instead of popcorn and fried dough. The walls were flimsy, but the music, the chatter of the conies, and the rumble of the rides all seemed very far away. I wanted to look down, but managed not to. Actually, you want to know if I'm a fraud, isn't that so? Ma'am, I honestly don't know what I want. At that, she smiled. It was a good one, as if I had passed some sort of test. You're a sweet boy, Jonesy, but like so many sweet boys, you're a punk liar. I started to reply. She hushed me with a wave of her ring-heavy right hand. She reached beneath her table and brought out her cash box. Madame Fortuna's readings were free, All part of your admission fee, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, but tips were encouraged, and legal under North Carolina law. When she opened the box, I saw a sheaf of crumpled bills, mostly ones, something that looked suspiciously like a punch board, not legal under North Carolina law, and a single small envelope. Printed on the front was my name. She held it out. I hesitated, then took it. "You didn't come to Joyland today just to ask me that," she said. "Well," she waved me off again. "You know exactly what you want. In the short term, at least. And since the short term is all any of us have, who is Fortuna, or Razzie Gold for that matter, to argue with you? Go now. Do what you came here to do. When he's done, open that and read what I've written." She smiled. "No charge to employees, especially not good kids like you. I don't—" She rose in a swirl of skirts and a rattle of jewelry. "Go, Jonesy. We're finished here." I left her tight little booth in a daze. Music from 24 shies and rides seemed to hit me like conflicting winds, and the sun was a hammer. I went directly to the administration building, actually a double-wide trailer, gave a courtesy knock, went in and said hello to Brenda Rafferty, who was going back and forth between an open account book and her faithful adding machine. "Hello, Devin," she said. "Are you taking care of your Hollywood girl?" "Yes, ma'am. We all watch out for her." "Dana Elkhart, isn't it?" "Aaron Cook, ma'am." "Aaron, of course. Team Beagle, the redhead. What can I do for you?" "I wonder if I could speak to Mr. Easterbrook." "He's resting, and I hate to disturb him. He had an awful lot of phone calls to make earlier, and we still have to go over some numbers, much as I hate to bother him with them. He tires very easily these days." "I wouldn't be long." She sighed. "I suppose I could see if he's awake. Can you tell me what it's about?" "A favor," I said. "He'll understand." He did, and only asked me 2 questions. The first was if I was sure. I said I was. The second, "Have you told your parents yet, Jonesy?" "It's just me and my dad, Mr. Easterbrook, and I'll do that tonight." "Very well, then. Put Brenda in the picture before you leave. She'll have all the necessary paperwork, and you can fill it out." Before he could finish, his mouth opened, and he displayed his horsey teeth in a vast, gaping yawn. "Excuse me, son. It's been a tiring day. Tiring summer." "Thank you, Mr. Easterbrook." He waved his hand. "Very welcome. I'm sure you'll be a great addition, but if you do this without your father's consent, I shall be disappointed in you. Close the door on your way out, please." I tried not to see Brenda's frown as she searched her file cabinets and hunted out the various forms Joyland Inc. required for full-time employment. Didn't matter, because I felt her disapproval anyway. I folded the paperwork, stuck it in the back pocket of my jeans, and left. Beyond the line of Donikers at the far end of the backyard was a little grove of black gum trees. I went in there, sat down with my back against one, and opened the envelope Madame Fortuna had given me. The note was brief and to the point. "You're going to Mr. Easterbrook to ask if you can stay on at the park after Labor Day. You know he will not refuse your request." She was right. I wanted to know if she was a fraud. Here was her answer. And yes, I had made up my mind about what came next in the life of Devin Jones. She had been right about that, too. But there was one more line. "You saved the little girl, but, dear boy, you can't save everyone." After I told my dad I wasn't going back to UNH, that I needed a year off from college and planned to spend it at Joyland, there was a long silence at the southern Maine end of the line. I thought he might yell at me, but he didn't. He only sounded tired. "It's that girl, isn't it?" I told him almost 2 months earlier that Wendy and I were taking some time off, but Dad saw right through that. Since then, he hadn't spoken her name a single time in our weekly phone conversations. Now, she was just that girl. After the first couple of times he said it, I tried to joke, asking if he thought I'd been going out with Marlo Thomas. He wasn't amused. I didn't try again. "Wendy's part of it," I admitted. "But not all of it. I just need some time off, a breather, and I've gotten to like it here." He sighed. "Maybe you do need a break." At least she'll be working instead of hitchhiking around Europe, like Dewey Michaud's girl. 14 months in youth hostels. 14 and counting. Ye gods. She's apt to come back with ringworm and a bun in the oven. Well, I said, I think I can avoid both of those if I'm careful. Just make sure you avoid the hurricanes. It's supposed to be a bad season for 'em. Are you really all right with this, Dad? Why? Did you want me to argue? Try to talk you out of it? If that's what you want, I'm willing to give it a shot. But I know what your mother would say. If he's old enough to buy a legal drink, he's old enough to start making decisions about his life. I smiled. Yeah, that sounds like her. As for me, I guess I don't want you going back to college if you're going to spend all your time mooning over that girl and letting your grades go to hell. If painting rides and fixing up concessions will help you get her out of your system, probably that's a good thing. But what about your scholarship and loan package if you want to go back in the fall of '74? It won't be a problem. I've got a 3.2 cum, which is pretty persuasive. That girl, he said in tones of infinite disgust, and then we moved on to other topics. I was still sad and depressed about how things had ended up with Wendy. He was right about that. But I had begun the difficult trip, the journey, as they say in the self-help groups these days, from denial to acceptance. Anything like true serenity was still over the horizon, but I no longer believed, as I had in the long, painful days and nights of June, that serenity was out of the question. Staying had to do with other things that I couldn't even begin to sort out, because they were piled helter-skelter in an untidy stack, and bound with the rough twine of intuition. Haley Stansfield was there. So was Bradley Easterbrook, way back at the beginning of the summer, saying, "We sell fun." The sound of the ocean at night was there, and the way a strong onshore breeze would make a little song when it blew through the struts of the Carolina Spin. The cool tunnels under the park were there. So was the talk, the secret language the other greenies would have forgotten by the time Christmas break rolled around. I didn't want to forget it. It was too rich. I felt that Joyland had something more to give me. I didn't know what, just some more. But mostly, this is weird. I've examined and re-examined my memories of those days to make sure it's a true memory, and it seems to be. It was because it had been our doubting Thomas to see the ghost of Linda Gray. It had changed him in small but fundamental ways. I don't think Tom wanted to change. I think he was happy just as he was. But I did. I wanted to see her too. During the second half of August, several of the old-timers, Pop Allen for one, Dottie Lassen for another, told me to pray for rain on Labor Day weekend. There was no rain, and by Saturday afternoon I understood what they meant. The Conies came back in force for one final grand hurrah, and Joyland was tips to the gills. What made it worse was that half of the summer help was gone by then, headed back to their various schools. The ones who were left worked like dogs. Some of us didn't just work like dogs, but as dogs. One dog in particular. I saw most of that holiday weekend through the mesh eyes of Howie the Happy Hound. On Sunday, I climbed into that damn fur suit a dozen times. After my second-to-last turn of the day, I was 3/4 of the way down the boulevard beneath Joyland Avenue when the world started to swim away from me in shades of gray. Shades of Linda Gray, I remember thinking. I was driving one of the little electric service carts with the fur pushed down to my waist so I could feel the air conditioning on my sweaty chest, and when I realized I was losing it, I had the good sense to pull over to a wall and take my foot off the rubber button that served as the accelerator. Fat Wally Schmidt, who ran the Guess Your Weight Shy, happened to be taking a break in the boneyard at the time. He saw me parked askew and slumped over the cart's steering bar. He got a pitcher of ice water out of the fridge, waddled down to me, and lifted my chin with one chubby hand. "Hey, Greenie, you got another suit, or is that the only one that fits you?"
"There's another one,"
I said. I sounded drunk.
"Custom show, extra large."
"Oh, hey, that's good," he said, and dumped the pitcher over my head. My scream of surprise echoed up and down the boulevard and brought several people running. "What the fuck? Fat Wally?" He grinned. "Wakes you up, don't it? Damn right it does. Labor Day weekend, Greenie, that means you labor. No sleeping on a job. Thank your lucky stars and bars ain't 110 out there." If it had been 110, I wouldn't be telling this story. I would have died of a baked brain halfway through a Happy Howie dance on the Wiggle Waggle story stage. But Labor Day itself was actually cloudy and featured a nice sea breeze. I got through it somehow. Around 4 o'clock that Monday, as I was climbing into the spare fur for my final show of the summer, Tom Kennedy strolled into the costume shop. His dog top and filthy sneakers were gone. He was wearing crisply pressed chinos. Wherever were you keeping them, I wondered? A neatly tucked-in Ivy League shirt and bass Weegians. Rosy-cheeked son of a bitch had even gotten a haircut. He looked every inch the up-and-coming college boy with his eye on the business world. You never would have guessed that he had been dressed in filthy Levi's only 2 days before, displaying at least an inch of ass cleavage as he crawled under the zipper with an oil bucket, and cursing Pop Allen, our fearless Team Beagle leader, every time he bumped his head on a strut. "You on your way?" I asked. "That's a big 10-4, good buddy. I'm taking the train to Philly at 8 tomorrow morning. I got a week at home, then it's back to the grind." "Good for you." "Erin's got some stuff to finish up, but then she's meeting me in Wilmington tonight. I booked us a room in a nice little bed and breakfast." I felt a dull throb of jealousy at that. "Good deal." "She's the real thing," he said. "I know." "So are you, Dev. We'll stay in touch. People say that and they don't mean it, but I do. We will stay in touch." He held out his hand. I took it and shook it. "That's right. We will." "You're okay, Tom, and Erin's a total package. You take care of her." "No problem there," he grinned. "Come spring semester, she's transferring to Rutgers. I already taught her the Scarlet Knights fight song. You know, upstream, red team, upstream." "Sounds complex," I said. He shook his finger at me. "Sarcasm will get you nowhere in this world, boy. Unless you're angling for a writing job at Mad Magazine, that is." Dottie Lassen called. "Maybe you could shorten up the farewells and keep the tears to a minimum. You've got a show to do, Jonesy." Tom turned to her and held out his arms. "Dottie, how I love you. How I'll miss you." She slapped her bottom to show just how much this moved her and turned away to a costume in need of repair. Tom handed me a scrap of paper. "My home address, school address, phone numbers for both. I expect you to use them." "I will." "You're really going to give up a year you could spend drinking beer and getting laid to scrape paint here at Joyland?" "Yep." "Are you crazy?" I considered this. "Probably. A little. But getting better." I was sweaty and his clothes were clean, but he gave me a brief hug just the same. Then he headed for the door, pausing to give Dottie a kiss on one wrinkled cheek. She couldn't cuss at him, her mouth was full of pins at the time, but she shooed him away with a flap of her hand. At the door he turned back to me. "You want some advice, Dev? Stay away from—" He finished with a head jerk, and I knew well enough what he meant. Horror House. Then he was gone, probably thinking about his visit home, and Erin, the car he hoped to buy, and Erin, the upcoming school year, and Erin. Upstream, red team, upstream. Come spring semester, they could chant it together. Hell, they could chant it that very night if they wanted to. In Wilmington, in bed, together. There was no punch clock at the park. Our comings and goings were supervised by our team leaders. After my final turn as Howie on that first Monday in September, Pop Allen told me to bring him my time card. "I've got another hour," I said. "Nah, someone's waiting at the gate to walk you back." I knew who the someone had to be. It was hard to believe there was a soft spot in Pop's shriveled-up raisin of a heart for anyone. But there was, and that summer, Miss Erin Cook owned it. "You know the deal tomorrow?" 7:30 to 6, I said. And no fur. What a blessing. "I'll be running you the first couple of weeks, then I'm off to sunny Florida. After that, you're Lane Hardy's responsibility. And Freddie Dean, I guess, if he happens to notice you're still around." "Got it." "Good. I'll sign your card and then you're 1042. Which meant the same thing in the talk as it did on the CBs that were so popular then. End of tour. "And Jonesy, tell that girl to send me a postcard once in a while. I'll miss her." He wasn't the only one. Erin had also begun making the transition back from Joyland life to real life. Gone were the faded jeans and T-shirt with the sassy rolled to the shoulder sleeves. Ditto the green Hollywood girl dress and the Sherwood Forest hat. The girl standing in the scarlet shower of neon just outside the gate was wearing a silky blue sleeveless blouse tucked into a belted A-line skirt. Her hair was pinned back, and she looked gorgeous. "Walk me up the beach," she said. "I'll just have time to catch the bus to Wilmington. I'm meeting Tom." He told me, "But never mind the bus, I'll drive you." "Would you do that?" "Sure." We walked along the fine white sand. A half moon had risen in the sky, and it beat a track across the water. Halfway to Heaven's Beach, it was, in fact, not far from the big green Victorian that played such a part in my life that fall. She took my hand, and we walked that way. We didn't say much until we reached the steps leading up to the beach parking lot. There she turned to me. "You'll get over her." Her eyes were on mine. She wasn't wearing makeup that night and didn't need any. The moonlight was her makeup. "Yes," I said. I knew it was true, and part of me was sorry. It's hard to let go. Even when what you're holding on to is full of thorns, it's hard to let go. Maybe especially then. "And for now, this is the right place for you. I feel that." "Does Tom feel it?" "No, but he never felt about Joyland the way that you do, and the way I did this summer. And after what happened that day in the funhouse, what he saw. Do the two of you ever talk about that?" I tried. Now I leave it alone. It doesn't fit into his philosophy of how the world works, so he's trying to make it gone. But I think he worries about you. Do you worry about me? About you and the ghost of Linda Gray? No. About you and the ghost of that Wendy? A little. I grinned. My father no longer speaks her name, just calls her that girl. "Aaron, would you do me a favor when you get back to school? If you have time, that is." "Sure. What is it?" I told her. She asked if I would drop her at the Wilmington bus station instead of taking her directly to the B&B Tom had booked. She said she'd rather take a taxi there. I started to protest it was a waste of money and then didn't. She looked flustered, a trifle embarrassed, and I guessed it had something to do with not wanting to climb out of my car, just so she could drop her clothes and climb into the sack with Tom Kennedy 2 minutes later. When I pulled up opposite the taxi stand, she put her hands on the side of my face and kissed my mouth. It was a long and thorough kiss. "If Tom hadn't been there, I would have made you forget that stupid girl," she said. "But he was," I said. "Yes, he was. Stay in touch, Dev. Remember what I asked you to do if you get a chance, that is." "I'll remember. You're a sweet man." I don't know why, but that made me feel like crying. I smiled instead. "Also, admit it. I made one hell of a Howie." "That you did. Devin Jones, savior of little girls." For a moment I thought she was going to kiss me again, but she didn't. She slid out of my car and ran across the street to the taxi, skirt flying. I sat there until I saw her climb into the back of a yellow and drive away. Then I drove away myself, back to Heaven's Beach and Mrs. Shoplaw's and my autumn at Joyland. Both the best and worst autumn of my life. Were Annie and Mike Ross sitting at the end of the green Victorian's boardwalk when I headed down the beach to the park on that Tuesday after Labor Day? I remember the warm croissants I ate as I walked, and the circling gulls, but of them I can't be completely sure. They became such an important part of the scenery, such a landmark that it's impossible to pinpoint the first time I actually noticed their presence. Nothing screws with memory like repetition. 10 years after the events I'm telling you about, I was, for my sins maybe, a staff writer on Cleveland Magazine. I used to do most of my first draft writing on yellow legal pads in a coffee shop on West 3rd Street near Lakefront Stadium, which was the Indians' stomping grounds back then. Every day at 10, this young woman would come in and get 4 or 5 coffees, then take them back to the real estate office next door. I couldn't tell you the first time I saw her either. All I know is that one day I saw her, and realized that she sometimes glanced at me as she went out. The day came when I returned that glance, and when she smiled, I did too. 8 months later, we were married. Annie and Mike were like that. One day they just became a real part of my world. I always waved, the kid in the wheelchair always waved back, and the dog sat watching me with his ears cocked and the wind ruffling his fur. The woman was blonde and beautiful. High cheekbones, wide-set blue eyes, and full lips, the kind that always looked a little bruised. The boy in the wheelchair wore a White Sox cap that came down over his ears. He looked very sick. His smile was healthy enough, though. Whether I was going or coming, he always flashed it. Once or twice he even flashed me the peace sign, and I sent it right back. I had become part of his landscape just as he had become part of mine. I think even Milo, the Jack Russell, came to recognize me as part of the landscape. Only Mom held herself apart. Often, when I passed, she never even looked up from whatever book she was reading. When she did, she didn't wave, and she certainly never flashed the peace sign. I had plenty to occupy my time at Joyland, and if the work wasn't as interesting and varied as it had been during the summer, it was steadier and less exhausting. I even got a chance to reprise my award-winning role as Howie, and to sing a few more choruses of Happy Birthday to You in the Wiggle Waggle Village, because Joyland was open to the public for the first 3 weekends in September. Attendance was way down, though, and I didn't jock a single tipsed ride. Not even the Carolina Spin, which was second only to the merry-go-round as our most popular attraction. Up north in New England, most parks stay open weekends until Halloween, Fred Dean told me one day. We were sitting on a bench and eating a nourishing, vitamin-rich lunch of chili burgers and pork rinds. Down south in Florida, they run year-round. We're in kind of a gray zone. Mr. Easterbrook tried pushing for a fall season back in the 60s, spent a bundle on a big advertising blitz, but it didn't work very well. By the time the night started getting nippy, people around here started thinking about county fairs and such. Also, a lot of our vets head south or out west for the winter. He looked down the empty expanse of Hound Dog Way and sighed. This place gets kind of lonely this time of year. I like it, I said, and I did. That was my year to embrace loneliness. I sometimes went to the movies in Lumberton or Myrtle Beach with Mrs. Shoplaw and Tina Ackerley, the librarian with the googly eyes, but I spent most evenings in my room, rereading The Lord of the Rings and writing letters to Aaron, Tom, and my dad. I also wrote a fair amount of poetry, which I am now embarrassed even to think about. Thank God I burned it. I added a new and satisfyingly grim record to my small collection, The Dark Side of the Moon. In the Book of Proverbs, we are advised that as a dog returns to its vomit, so a fool repeats his folly. That autumn I returned to Darkside again and again, only giving Floyd the occasional rest so I could listen to Jim Morrison once more intone, "This is the end, beautiful friend." Such a really bad case of the 21s. I know. At least there was plenty of Joyland to occupy my days. The first couple of weeks, while the park was still running part-time, were devoted to fall cleaning. Fred Dean put me in charge of a small crew of gazoonis, and by the time the close for the season sign went up out front, we had raked and cut every lawn, prepared every flower bed for winter, and scrubbed down every joint and shy. We slapped together a prefab corrugated metal shed in the backyard and stored the food carts, called grub rollers in the talk, there for the winter. Each popcorn wagon, snow cone wagon, and pupalicious wagon snugged under its own green tarp. When the Gazoonies headed north to pick apples, I started the winterizing process with Lane Hardy and Eddie Parks, the ill-tempered vet who ran Horror House and Team Doberman during the season. We drained the fountain at the intersection of Joyland Avenue and Hound Dog Way, and had moved on to Captain Nemo's Splash and Crash, a much bigger job, when Bradley Easterbrook, dressed for traveling in his black suit, came by. "I'm off to Sarasota this evening," he told us. "Brenda Rafferty will be with me as usual." He smiled, showing those horse teeth of his. "I'm touring the park and saying my thank yous, to those who are left, that is." "Have a wonderful winter, Mr. Easterbrook," Lane said. Eddie muttered something that sounded to me like eat a wooden ship, but was probably have a good trip. "Thanks for everything," I said. He shook hands with the three of us, coming to me last. "I hope to see you again next year, Jonesy. I think you're a young man with more than a little Carney in his soul." But he didn't see me the following year, and nobody saw him. Mr. Easterbrook died on New Year's Day in a condo on John Ringling Boulevard, less than a half-mile from where the famous circus winters. "Crazy old bastard," Parks said, watching Easterbrook walk to his car where Brenda was waiting to receive him and help him in. Lane gave him a long, steady look, then said, "Shut it, Eddie." Eddie did, which was probably wise. One morning, as I walked to Joyland with my croissants, the Jack Russell finally trotted down the beach to investigate me. "Milo! Come back!" the woman called. Milo turned to look at her, then looked back at me with his bright black eyes. On impulse, I tore a piece from one of my pastries, squatted, and held it out to him. Milo came like a shot. "Don't you feed him," the woman called sharply. "Oh, Mom, get over it," the boy said. Milo heard her and didn't take the shred of croissant, but he did sit up before me with his front paws held out. I gave him the bite. "I won't do it again," I said, getting up, but I couldn't let a good trick go to waste. The woman snorted and went back to her book, which was thick and looked arduous. The boy called, "We feed him all the time. He never puts on weight, just runs it off." Without looking up from her book, Mom said, "What do we know about talking to strangers, Maiko?" "He's not exactly a stranger when we see him every day," the boy pointed out. Reasonably enough, at least from my point of view. "I'm Devin Jones," I said. "From down the beach. I work at Joyland." "Then you won't want to be late." Still not looking up. The boy shrugged at me. "What are you going to do?" it said. He was pale, and as bent over as an old man, but I thought there was a lively sense of humor in that shrug, and the look that went with it. I returned the shrug and walked on. The next morning I took care to finish my croissant before I got to the big green Victorian so Milo wouldn't be tempted. But I waved. The kid Mike waved back. The woman was in her usual place under the green umbrella, and she had no book, but, as per usual, she didn't wave to me. Her lovely face was closed. "There is nothing here for you," it said. "Go on down your trumpery amusement park and leave us alone." So that was what I did, but I continued to wave, and the kid waved back. Morning and night, the kid waved back. The Monday after Gary Pop Allen left for Florida, bound for Alston's All-Star Carnival in Jacksonville where he had a job waiting as a shy boss, I arrived at Joyland and found Eddie Parks, my least favorite old-timer, sitting in front of Horror House on an apple box. Smoking was verboten in the park, but with Mr. Easterbrook gone and Fred Dean nowhere in evidence, Eddie seemed to feel it safe to flout the rule. He was smoking with gloves on, which would have struck me as strange if he ever took them off, but he never seemed to. "There you are, kiddo, and only 5 minutes late." Everyone else either called me Dev or Jonesy, but to Eddie, I was just kiddo, and always would be. "I've got 7:30 on the nose," I said, tapping my watch. "Then you're slow. Why don't you drive from town like everybody else? You could be here in 5 minutes. "I like the beach." "I don't give a tin shit what you like, kiddo. Just get here on time. This isn't like one of your college classes when you can duck in and out anytime you want to. This is a job, and now that Head Beagle is gone, you're gonna work like it's a job." I could have pointed out that Pop had told me Lane Hardy would be in charge of my schedule after Pop, was gone, but kept my lip zipped. No sense making a bad situation worse. As to why Eddie had taken a dislike to me, that was obvious. Eddie was an equal opportunity disliker. I'd go to Lane if life with Eddie got too hard, but only as a last resort. My father had taught me, mostly by example, that if a man wanted to be in charge of his life, he had to be in charge of his problems. "What have you got for me, Mr. Parks?" "Plenty. I want you to get a tub of turtle wax from the supply shed to start with, and don't be lingering down there to shoot the shit with any of your pals either. Then I want you to go in on horror and wax all them cars. Except, of course, he said it, cars. You know we wax them once the season's over, don't you?" Actually, I didn't. Jesus Christ, you kids. He stomped on his cigarette butt, then lifted the apple box he was sitting on up to toss it under, as if it would make it gone. "You want to really put some elbow grease into it, kiddo, or I'll send you back in to do it again. You got that?" "I got it." "Good for you." He stuck another cigarette in his gob, then fumbled in his pants pocket for his lighter. With the gloves on, it took him a while. He finally got it, flicked back the lid, then stopped. "What are you looking at?" "Nothing," I said. "Then get going. Flip on the house light so you can see what the fuck you're doing. You know where the switches are, don't you?" I didn't, but I'd find them without his help. "Sure." He eyed me sourly. "Ain't you the smart one?" "Smart." I found a metal box marked LTS on the wall between the wax museum and the barrel and bridge room. I opened it and flipped up all the switches with the heel of my hand. Horror House should have lost all of its cheesy, sinister mystique with all the house lights on, but somehow didn't. There were still shadows in the corners, and I could hear the wind, quite strong that morning, blowing outside the joint's thin wooden walls and rattling a loose board somewhere. I made a mental note to track it down and fix it. I had a wire basket swinging from one hand. It was filled with clean rags and a giant economy-size can of turtle wax. I carried it through the tilted room, now frozen on a starboard slant, and into the arcade. I looked at the skee-ball machines and remembered Aaron's disapproval. Don't they know that's a complete butcher's game? I smiled at the memory, but my heart was beating hard. I knew what I was going to do when I finished my chore, you see. The cars, 20 in all, were lined up at the loading point. Ahead, the tunnel leading into the bowels of Horror House was lit by a pair of bright white work lights instead of flashing strobes. It looked a lot more prosaic that way. I was pretty sure Eddie hadn't so much as swiped the little cars with a damp rag all summer long, and that meant I had to start by washing them down, which also meant fetching soap powder from the supply shed and carrying buckets of water from the nearest working tap. By the time I had all 20 cars washed and rinsed off, it was break time, but I decided to work right through instead of going out to the backyard or down to the boneyard for coffee. I might meet Eddie at either place, and I'd listened to enough of his grouchy bullshit for one morning. I set to work polishing instead, laying the turtle wax on thick and then buffing it off, moving from car to car, making them shine in the overhead lights until they looked new again. Not that the next crowd of thrill-seekers would notice as they crowded in for their 9-minute ride. My own gloves were ruined by the time I was finished. I'd have to buy a new pair at the hardware store in town, and good ones didn't come cheap. I amused myself briefly by imagining how Eddie would react if I asked him to pay for them. I stashed my basket of dirty rags and turtle wax, the can now mostly empty, by the exit door in the arcade. It was 10 past noon. But right then, food wasn't what I was hungry for. I tried to stretch the ache out of my arms and legs, then went back to the loading point. I paused to admire the cars gleaming mellowly beneath the lights, then walked slowly along the track and into Horror House proper. I had to duck my head when I passed beneath the screaming skull, even though it was now pulled up and locked into its home position. Beyond it was a dungeon where the live talent from Eddie's Team Doberman had tried and mostly succeeded in scaring the crap out of children of all ages with their moans and howls. Here, I could straighten up again, because it was a tall room. My footfalls echoed on a wooden floor painted to look like stone. I could hear my breathing. It sounded harsh and dry. I was scared, okay? Tom had told me to stay away from this place, but Tom didn't run my life any more than Eddie Parks did. I had the Doors, and I had Pink Floyd, but I wanted more. I wanted Linda Gray. Between the dungeon and the torture chamber, the track descended and described a double S curve where the cars picked up speed and whipped the riders back and forth. Horror House was a dark ride, but when it was in operation, this stretch was the only completely dark part. It had to be where the girl's killer had cut her throat and dumped her body. How quick he must have been, and how certain of exactly what he was going to do. Beyond the last curve, riders were dazzled by a mix of stuttering, multicolored strobes. Although Tom had never said it in so many words, I was positive it was where he had seen what he had seen. I walked slowly down the double S, thinking it would not be beyond Eddie to hear me and shut off the overhead work lights as a joke, to leave me in here, to feel my way past the murder site with only the sound of the wind and that one slapping board to keep me company. And suppose, just suppose, a young girl's hand reached out in the darkness and took mine the way Aaron had taken my hand that last night on the beach. The light stayed on. No bloody shirt and gloves appeared beside the track glowing spectrally. And when I came to what I felt sure was the right spot just before the entrance to the torture chamber, there was no ghost girl holding her hands out to me. Yet, something was there. I knew it then and I know it now. The air was colder. Not cold enough to see my breath, but yes, definitely colder. My arms and legs and groin all prickled with goose flesh, and the hair at the nape of my neck stiffened. "Let me see you," I whispered, feeling foolish and terrified, wanting it to happen, hoping it wouldn't. There was a sound, a long, slow sigh. Not a human sigh, not in the least. It was as if someone had opened an invisible steam valve. Then it was gone. There was no more. Not that day. "Took you long enough," Eddie said when I finally reappeared at 1:45. He was seated on the same apple box, now with the remains of a BLT in one hand and a styrofoam cup of coffee in the other. I was filthy from the neck down. Eddie, on the other hand, looked fresh as a daisy. The cars were pretty dirty. I had to wash them before I could wax them. Eddie hawked back phlegm, twisted his head, and spat. "If you want a medal, I'm fresh out. Go find Hottie. He says it's time to drain the irrigation system. That should keep a lag ass like you busy until quitting time. If it don't, come see me and I'll find something else for you to do. I got a whole list, believe me. Okay. I started off, glad to be going. Kiddo. I turned back reluctantly. Did you see her in there? Huh? He grinned unpleasantly. Don't harm me. I know what you were doing. You weren't the first and you won't be the last. Did you see her? Have you ever seen her? Nope. He looked at me, sly little gimlet eyes peering out of her narrow sunburned face. How old was he? 30? 60? It was impossible to tell, just as it was impossible to tell if he was speaking the truth. I didn't care. I just wanted to be away from him. He gave me the creeps. Eddie raised his gloved hands. The guy who did it wore a pair of these. You know that? I nodded. Also an extra shirt. That's right. His grin widened. To keep the blood off. And it worked, didn't it? They never caught him. Now get out of here. When I got to the spin, only Lane's shadow was there to greet me. The man it belonged to was halfway up the wheel, climbing the struts. He tested each steel crosspiece before he put his weight on it. A leather toolkit hung on one hip, and every now and then he reached into it for a socket wrench. Joyland only had a single dark ride, but almost a dozen so-called high rides, including the spin, the zipper, the thunderball, and the delirium shaker. There was a 3-man maintenance crew that checked them each day before early gate during the season, and of course there were visits, both announced and unannounced, from the North Carolina State Inspector of Amusements. But Lane said a ride jock who didn't check his ride himself was both lazy and irresponsible, which made me wonder when Eddie Parks had last ridden in one of his own cars and safety-checked the bars. Lane looked down, saw me, and shouted, Did that ugly son of a bitch ever give you a lunch break? I worked through it, I called back. Lost track of time. But now I was hungry. There's some tuna and macaroni salad in my doghouse if you want it. I made up way too much last night. I went into the little control shack, found a good-sized Tupperware container, and popped it open. By the time Lane was back on the ground, the tuna and macaroni was in my stomach, and I was tamping it down with a couple of leftover Fig Newtons. Thanks, Lane. That was tasty. Yeah, I'll make some guy a good wife someday. Give me some of those Newtons before they all go down your throat. I handed over the box. How's the ride? The spin is tight and the spin is right. Want to help me work on the engine for a while after you've digested a little? Sure. He took off his derby and spun it on his finger. His hair was pulled back in a tight little ponytail, and I noticed a few threads of white in the black. They hadn't been there at the start of the summer. I was quite sure of it. Listen, Jonesy, Eddie Parks is Carney from Carney, but that doesn't change the fact that he's one mean-ass son of a bitch. In his eyes, you got 2 strikes against you. You're young and you've been educated beyond the 8th grade. When you get tired of taking his shit, tell me. I'll get him to back off. Thanks, but I'm okay for now. I know you are. I've been watching how you handle yourself, and I'm impressed. But Eddie's not your average bear. He's a bully, I said. Yeah, but here's the good news. Like with most bullies, you scratch the surface and you find pure chicken shit underneath. Usually not very far underneath either. There are people on the show he's afraid of, and I happen to be one of them. I've whacked his nose before, and I don't mind whacking it again. All I'm saying is that if the day comes when you want a little breathing room, I'll see that you get it. Can I ask you a question about him? Shoot. Why does he always wear those gloves? Lane laughed, stuck his derby on his head, and gave it the correct tilt. Psoriasis. His hands are scaly with it, or so he says. I can't tell you the last time I actually saw him. He says without the gloves he scratches them until they bleed. Maybe that's what makes him so bad-tempered. I think it's more likely the other way around. The bad temper made the bad skin. He tapped his temple. Head controls the body. That's what I believe. Come on, Jonesy. Let's get to work. We finished putting the spin right for its long winter's nap, then moved on to the irrigation system. By the time the pipes were blown out with compressed air and the drains had swallowed several gallons of antifreeze, the sun was lowering toward the trees west of the park and the shadows were lengthening. That's enough for today, Lane said. More than enough. Bring me your card and I'll sign it. I tapped my watch, showing him it was only 5:15. He shook his head, smiling. I've got no problem writing 6 on the card. You did 12 hours worth today, kiddo. 12 easy. Okay, I said. But don't call me kiddo. That's what he calls me. I jerked my head toward Horror House. I'll make a note of it. Now bring me your card and buzz off. The wind had died a little during the afternoon, but it was still warm and breezy when I set off down the beach. On many of those walks back to town, I liked to watch my long shadow on the waves, but that evening, I mostly watched my feet. I was tired out. What I wanted was a ham and cheese sandwich from Betty's Bakery and a couple of beers from the 7-Eleven next door. I'd go back to my room, settle into my chair by the window, and read some Tolkien as I ate. I was deep into the Two Towers. What made me look up was the boy's voice. The breeze was in my favor and I could hear him clearly. Faster, Mom! You've almost got... He was temporarily stopped by a coughing fit. Then, you've almost got it! Mike's mother was on the beach tonight instead of beneath her umbrella. She was running toward me but didn't see me, because she was looking at the kite she was holding over her head. The string ran back to the boy seated in his wheelchair at the end of the boardwalk. Wrong direction, Mom, I thought. She released the kite. It rose a foot or two, wagged naughtily from side to side, then took a dive into the sand. The breeze kicked